our newsroom. Hello and welcome once again from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name, of course, Evan Jansen. This show is always live and broadcast from our studios right here in Auckland Park. Now, between 9 and 12 every weekday morning. We're also live on YouTube, which means you can watch us live there anywhere in the world or on demand a little bit later if you miss any of the top stories on the show. Today, our question deals with land reform. We're asking you, what can South Africa learn from Zimbabwe's land redistribution process? Now, the land reform process, of course, have had several stumbling blocks. We'll talk about those throughout the run of the show today. We'll also cross to Zimbabwe, hopefully, to get some reaction on the latest within the process. But first, let's go get some news from Elvis.
Scores of foreign nationals have fled Katlehong on Gauteng seized rand in overnight looting and violence. A group of 29 Cape Town University students who stormed the gates of Parliament last year are expected to appear in the Cape Town Magistrates Court today. And the World Health Organization says that West Africa's Ebola outbreak no longer constitutes a threat to international public health. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning to you, Kendall.
Elvis, good morning to you. Thank you very much. And good morning to everybody at home as well. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
It's by luck. If we would definitely, it's going to be tough. We won't make it at that.
Bafana's hopes of qualifying for AFCON 2017 fade away as they draw 0-0 with Cameroon in Durban.
Look, I'm just a guy that's going to work hard with these players. That's the bottom line. I know the players support me. I've got very good relationships with the players.
The Proteas arrive back in country with tough questions to answer.
It's a big, exciting match, but our feet are firmly on the ground and we're going to be wanting to perform our plans as best we can again.
Now, New Zealand are the only unbeaten team at the World Cup so far, are taking nothing for granted ahead of the semi-final against England today. That's what we've got for you in the sports at about 10:20 or so. Back now to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. He will be back later with more. Our top story this morning, scores of foreign nationals have fled Katlehong and Gauteng seized rand in overnight looting and violence. Locals clash with foreign shop owners who try to reopen their businesses. Now, they've been barred from the area since earlier this month after a Pakistani shop owner allegedly shot and killed a local and injured 4 others. Police continue to monitor the area this morning. Our reporter Griselda Lewis and cameraman Herbert Mamela were in Katlehong last night.
Running battles, Ekurhuleni Metro Police had their hands full. Again, stripped of their livelihood, foreign nationals salvaging what remains of yet another looting spree.
Well, this is all that remains from hours of overnight looting. Many foreign nationals have fled this area to the local police station. They say remaining in the township would be a risk to their lives. At the police station, the devastation palpable.
Big problem, Baba.
But the refuge they sought here was short-lived.
It's problematic. People are not yet relaxed. They are still at anger. You try to go in now, you will be killed. Your life is in risk, and already some of your guys, they were assaulted, stabbed, shops looted.
We are not living here. We don't want to put our lives in risk.
We're scared, very scared. So I have to stay in police station, otherwise no way.
I don't have safe place to stay and to sleep also.
Back in the township, the affected shops being closed off, while others are already counting the losses.
Because
Nosive Machukulana leases her garage to a foreign national for business. Now it's all gone.
More police reinforcements were brought in overnight. Crisalda Lewis, SABC News, Katlehong on the East Rand.
Now for an update on the story, we're joined on the line by Gauteng Police spokesperson Nokolo Kweza. Nokolo, very good morning to you. Now, can you tell us, there are reports that a person has been shot or stabbed. Can you confirm this for us?
I am not in a position to confirm that. We don't have reports of a person being stabbed, nor shot, nor killed.
So nobody killed and nobody stabbed or shot. What is the situation like in Katlehong at the moment?
At the moment, the situation in Katlehong is calm, and the police members are patrolling the area and monitoring.
Let me just go back to that question. So nobody has died in the interim from when the violence started?
We're talking now from yesterday.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
Mm-hmm. And before that?
Even before that, nobody has died.
Okay. Now, do you know why the foreign shops are being looted at this point in time?
As indicated, that there was a meeting yesterday where amongst the locals, some of the locals wanting the foreign nationals to come back in the area. Some of them did not want them to come back in the area. They threatened to loot the shops. However, the nationals that want the foreign nationals to come back assisted the police in stopping the attempt to loot. And as a result, the situation was brought into calm.
Mm-hmm. So the situation is calm. Is there still a police presence, though, in the area?
There's still going to be police presence in the area and monitoring the situation.
Mm-hmm. Any arrest at this point in time that has been made from the people that looted some of the shops?
No, at the moment, no arrest yet. But we are investigating a case of public violence.
Nokolo, thank you so much for that update there. That was Nokolo Kweza. She is the spokesperson for Gauteng Police. Now, the World Health Organization says that West Africa's Ebola outbreak no longer constitutes a threat to international public health. It's declared an end to a nearly 20-month outbreak that killed around 11,300 people.
In terms of the original transmission chains, these have all stopped now. The original transmission chains that were ongoing at the time the FIC was declared and subsequent to that, these have been stopped, meaning the countries have met the criteria of a 42-day observation period after the last case twice tested negative, and then an additional enhanced surveillance period of a further 90 days. The most recent country to achieve that, of course, was Guinea, that passed that 90-day extended surveillance period on the 27th of March. What's happening right now in Guinea is a new cluster or little outbreak related to a reintroduction from the survivor population. So this in some ways is distinct and is one of the ongoing risks that have to be managed as the outbreak is brought to its complete conclusion.
Home now, a group of 29 Cape Town University students who stormed the gates of Parliament last year are expected to appear in the Cape Town Magistrates Court today. Among them are the sons of struggle hero Frank Chikane, the UCT Vice-Chancellor Max Price, Anglican Archbishop Thabo Makgoba and Advocate Wim Trengrove. Also in the group is prominent student activist Chumani Makwele, who initiated the Rhodes Must Fall campaign that led to the eventual removal of the Cecil John Rhodes statue from UCT last year. Now, the students are facing charges of public violence and attending an illegal gathering. In October last year, the students clashed with riot police when they marched on Parliament as part of the hashtag Fees Must Fall campaign. Johannesburg city officials have intensified cleanup operations under heavy security. They are trying to deal with the mess that was left in the wake of the Pikitup strike, which has entered a fourth week. Disciplinary action against 4,000 employees has begun.
Undeterred by disciplinary steps against them, Pikitup workers continue to defy a court order spurred by distrust.
Mfikwe MMC already said that we are dismissed before ATC, which means what we are going for there, we are not happy. We can't trust the results of those cases. Secondly, they will never go back until they get their benchmark payments.
But while city officials have launched an investigation into the Pikitup MD, they insist Amanda Neya is not going anywhere for now. The strike has been characterized by violence and intimidation. Several waste collection trucks have been attacked and workers targeted. 19 workers have been arrested for charges ranging from violence to attempted murder.
The actions of the striking workers that place the health and safety of residents at risk is regretted. There can be no justification for unprotected work stoppages and the trashing of the city.
But disciplinary processes are now underway. Private security, Metro Police and even SABC have been roped in to beef up security. SABC News, Johannesburg.
Transport Minister Dipuo Peter says the number of crashes caused by fatigue, reckless and drunk driving is still a major concern. Now, this despite the 46% decrease in road fatalities over the Easter weekend. The minister announced yesterday that there were 156 fatalities this year compared to 287 for the same period last year. She attributed the sharp decline to visible policing and an increase in road safety campaigns. Nearly 1,000 motorists were locked up for drunk driving over the Easter. The Constitutional Court is set to hand down judgment in the Nkandla matter tomorrow. The highest court in the land has to rule whether the President, Jacob Zuma, has to comply with the Public Protector's recommendations that he should pay for some of the upgrades at his Nkandla residence in KwaZulu-Natal. The EFF and the DA brought an application to court earlier this year. The Democratic Alliance says they believe the judgment will be a defining moment for the country. Right now, theme for today is about land reform, and there's a question that we pose to you as well. Do you remember the Zimbabwe land reform program and what happened there? The question that we pose to you, what can we as South Africans learn from Zimbabwe's land reform program? I want to know from you on the Facebook page. If you like us there, by the way, you become part and parcel of the Informed here on Newsroom. You can also tweet us, Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. But right now, let's go to Eben.
Yes, Elvis, Zimbabwe's plan to win back international funding by paying compensation to the white farmers it forced off their land faces a major snag. The black farmers, expected to stump up the money, say they simply don't have it. The new occupants of the farm say they can barely make ends meet these days, let alone pay for an extra levy.
I'm sorry, I've got a white skin, all right? But I know how to farm.
Thousands of white farmers whose properties were expropriated during the land invasions have waited for up to 16 years for compensation. John Worsley Worswick, who was evicted from his farm in 2004, led the Justice for Agriculture, an organization that helped farmers sue Zimbabwe in international courts.
I'm the legal rightful owner of this property until such time as I'm compensated.
Worswick passed away in 2015 before he received his payout, but there is new hope for others. The Constitution, signed into law in 2013, upholds compensation for improvements. Zimbabwe has always maintained that expropriated land must be compensated for by colonial powers. A document submitted to Parliament for approval this month proposes compensation for both, a marked shift from the previous policy. Zimbabwe is proposing to pay the compensation from taxes levied on black farmers that receive the farms. Plot holders will pay $15 annually, while commercial farmers will pay $5 per hectare, or an average of $15,000 a year. Defaulters risk losing their farms. Zimbabwe's shift is believed to be linked to pressure from the international community. It hopes this, as well as a raft of other economic reforms, will pave the way for the first IMF and World World Bank loans in over 15 years. But some believe the price is too great. New farmers are struggling to make ends meet as a result of lack of financing and 2 successive droughts. On the other hand, some white farmers say the levies will bring in less than $100 million a year, and that it could take up to 100 years for Zimbabwe to pay off the $10 billion that they believe they are owed. Shingai Nyoka, SABC News, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Of course, our theme and our question today deals directly with this. We're asking of you, what can South Africa learn from Zimbabwe's land reform process? There's the question on screen. At SABC Newsroom is where you can send us your contribution. We'll put it up, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. Now, to give a little bit more on the other crisis in Zimbabwe, the Farmers Union there, that's the Zimbabwean Farmers Union, they've welcomed the plans to compensate, but they say only if it means it will bring improvements for the farmers themselves. Now, we are joined on the line by the Zimbabwe Farmers Union Director, Mr. Paul Zakaria, today. Mr. Zakaria, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us on the line.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Zakaria, just give us your reaction as the Farmers Union to the latest pronouncements with regards to compensation for white farmers.
Well, as a union, we see this not as an adverse development. It is actually very positive. It is one decision that has been made so far, which is going to bring a lot of opportunities to the farmers that benefited from the land reform program. In that, it brings a sense of ownership. It brings a sense of responsibility over the resources that were acquired. And it also is quite strategic in terms of inferring that, peace of mind, where the whole world was condemning the process, saying that, farms have just been taken for free. There is this understanding from government that it is important, at least, to compensate for the developments that were found on the farms that were repossessed for a good cause, of course. Yes, there are problems in terms of whether the amounts that are going to be mobilized using this methodology are going to be adequate or not. That is one other thing. But at least we do have a starting point, and this gives dignity to the people of Zimbabwe.
What about affordability? The current farmers on the farms, mostly black, they say they can't afford to pay this levy. How do you overcome this stumbling block?
Well, levies are always an issue. If you impose a levy, nobody is ever happy to pay a levy from a practical point of view. But from a strategic point of view, no farmer is looking at this as a negative thing. It is just that the agricultural seasons over the last 2-3 years have not been very good. And also, if you understand the economic terrain of the country, you would also understand that the support that one would require from financial institutions and also support other support services are not as they're supposed to be. So farmers are not really making money out of their farms. What we need to do is improve productivity, increase support towards agriculture, and these levies will not be a thing at all to talk about, as long as farmers can access loans and as long as farmers can get the other support services that are required to improve and increase productivity.
So Zakaria, I want to ask, we're asking our viewers this question today, and I'd like you to maybe give us your views on it. We're asking them, what can South Africa learn from Zimbabwe's land reform process? What do you think? You've been right involved for the last 20 years.
We really have to look at the issue of the land as a very, very sensitive issue. And we need to look at this from a context of where we are coming from as Africa. 1858, the Berlin Conference, where nations outside Africa discussed how they could share the continent, and they drew up a map and began to give each other pieces of land. And this had nothing to do with whether the black people, the Africans, were consulted or not. Suddenly, one morning, boundaries were marked out, and you could not visit your neighbor across the boundary. You now needed a passport and so on. These are imbalances that will continue to have serious and negative impact on the African continent. So we need to look at it from a colonial perspective. What did that do to the African people? What did that do to the pride of the African? And if everybody else sees things from that angle and many other angles, you would want to see this as an issue that you can correct. But you would also want to correct this from a very realistic and sensible, perspective, which does not bring, hunger and poverty to your own people. You'd want to then employ. Of course, what happened in Zimbabwe was one way of correcting things. But was it the best way? It is quite debatable. There are so many other ways that we could have done things, but at least it was done. And now the people are on the land and they are now grappling with, can we make it productive again? Are they going to make it productive? Yes, if everything else is put in place. And then if all the political bickering stops, and then we go back to the basics in terms of production. So South Africa does require this, and it is very important that deliberate steps may be taken, avoid the mistakes that Zimbabwe made, or avoid the issues of, affecting production and productivity, and still proceed with correcting these imbalances.
Thank you very much for joining us. That's the director of the Zimbabwean Farmers Union, Mr. Paul Zakaria, telling us about their experience with land reform, the mistakes that they've made and the lessons they've learned. Of course, we're asking you the question today. That question is, what can South Africa learn from Zimbabwe's land restitution or land reform process? Of course, it's a very tender issue here in South Africa. This is, how do you view, what can we learn from what happened in Zimbabwe? Of course, yesterday, we asked a different question. Are South African roads becoming safer? This after a 46 or 47% drop in road fatalities over Easter weekend. Are roads becoming more safer? Here are some of the tweets that we got from you. So let's just look back. It is such an important scenario in South Africa. So many people, 40 people die per day on average on our roads. Now, Humphrey says, at SABC Newsroom, give credit to traffic officers for their sterling work and motorists for good behavior. Cheers to that, Humphrey. A very sobering view there today. Machira Shishoke says, at SABC Newsroom, why is it that the traffic law enforcement become firm only during Easter and festive season, and why not consistent throughout? Resources, Machira. We cannot have a traffic officer every kilometer on every road of our country. That's not going to solve our problem. We need to change our behavior on the road. It's as simple as that. Do we have another one? No, those were some of the tweets that came in from yesterday. Keep it coming. We love those tweets, and they're very, very valid points that you make. Now, let's take a look at the front pages from around the globe this morning. We'll start in New York. The Wall Street Journal reports that the hijacker of a domestic Egypt Air flight with 63 passengers and crew aboard surrendered at an airport in Cyprus yesterday. No one, of course, was harmed, and the authentic-looking suicide vest he was wearing turned out to be a fake. Then, in the USA Today says, the Federal Trade Commission yesterday accused Volkswagen Group of deceiving its American consumers into buying emission-spewing diesel vehicles seeking more than $15 billion in damages in what could be one of the largest false advertising cases in US history. Then finally, in the United Kingdom, The Guardian reports that the Bank of England has given David Cameron a significant boost ahead of the EU referendum by warning that a vote to leave risks causing a run on sterling, a credit crunch, and higher interest rates for mortgage payers and businesses. Will the British then still vote when the pocket gets hit so hard? What if the pound comes down to five rand to the pound? Be a doomsday scenario for them, wouldn't it? Anyhow, let's take a look at what's happening in our courts here today. We'll start here in Johannesburg. Now, a prominent football star arrested for speeding on Good Friday is expected to appear in the Brixton Magistrates Court today. The soccer player was arrested after being caught driving at 173 km per hour in a 120 km per hour zone along the Golden Highway yeah, in Johannesburg. That is not acceptable behavior anymore in South Africa. Anyhow, still, yeah, Thabo Nkala, Edmond Lovu and Mduduzi Matibela will appear in the Johannesburg Magistrates Court on charges of rape and murder today. They were allegedly part of a 12-man gang who attacked two couples at Rhodes Park in Kensington, yeah, in Johannesburg. The two men were tied up and thrown into the lake. They subsequently drowned. One of the women was gang raped while the other woman managed to escape. A high-profile case that was here in South Africa. Then we moved to Cape Town. The group of 29 Cape Town University students who stormed the gates of Parliament last year are expected to appear in the Magistrates Court in the mother city today. Now, the sons of struggle hero Frank Chikane, UCT Vice-Chancellor Max Price, Anglican Archbishop Thabo Makgoba and Advocate Wim Trengrove are amongst them. The students were part of the #FeesMcFall campaign. It'll be interesting what happens in the court there. SABC News will keep you updated. Time for us now to take a short commercial break. We're talking about land reform, the relation to what's happening in Zimbabwe. After the break, Elvis will be talking to AfriForum, who successfully assisted a group of farmers in Zimbabwe. Don't go away.
Get all the latest news from the SABC's online news services on our website. Breaking news and in-depth coverage of everything from business, sports to politics and lifestyle. Catch the top news clips and watch live streaming of major news events on the SABC News YouTube channel whenever. Stay connected on the SABC News Facebook page and have your say on news that matters to you. And for the latest headlines and live updates from our reporters, follow us on Twitter. SABC Digital News, anytime, anywhere.
A very good afternoon. You're watching the Midday Report.
Lunchtime news amplified.
But for now, this is what they call home. Their hope to shift to higher ground seems to be against the tide.
Midday Report provides you with more than just news stories.
I just want Port Elizabeth to know that they own a world-class theatre.
Good afternoon. You're with the news at 1 in the headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. This is News Live. I'm Natasha Thorpe. Let's take a quick look at what's coming up in your headlines.
Good afternoon and welcome to A View from the House.
For all things news, tune in to Midday Report weekdays at 12 noon only on the SABC News channel.
AfriForum successfully assisted a group of dispossessed Zimbabwean commercial farmers to enforce a 2008 ruling by the Southern African Development Community's Regional Court here in South Africa. That's our discussion as we continue this morning on that particular theme on the Zimbabwean land reform. Now, the tribunal ruled that Mugabe's land grabs were unlawful, racist, and in contravention of applicable international law. Now, to talk to us more on the ruling and how the group assisted the farmers, we're now joined in studio by Ernst Roos, the spokesperson of AfriForum. A very good morning to you, Ernst, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
First and foremostly, are you of the view that Zimbabwe's land reform program was illegal, racist, and violated international law?
Well, most certainly. The program started in about 2000, the year 2000, and since then more than 4,000 white farmers have been chased off their land. In many of these cases, it was done very violently, and many of them have been killed in the process. And together with this process and what we saw happening on ground level, we also heard statements, political statements by Mugabe himself and his cabinet ministers saying things like white people are criminals and they are not welcome in Zimbabwe and they cannot be Zimbabweans and so forth. So it was essentially, I think, at the very core of this policy, it was a racist policy. and it was also a gross violation of human rights and a violation of the SADC tribunal, of the rules in terms of that, the SADC agreement, which was enforced by the SADC tribunal.
What was the ruling then from the tribunal that came out?
Well, the SADC agreement is an agreement, it's a South African Development Community agreement from different countries. And what the ruling amounted to was that as you said in the interview or in the introduction, that the policy was racist and it was a violation of human rights. And because it was this agreement was also enforced and ratified by South Africa, that's why we also say that this particular case made international law history. So this is an international agreement by several countries, and South Africa was one of the parties. But although this human rights violation was taking place in Zimbabwe, because of the fact that South Africa was a party to this convention, South Africa was forced also to take steps, which they didn't want to do initially. And that is why we went to court, how we were able to go to a South African court to enforce that ruling, which eventually resulted in the selling of Zimbabwean government properties in South Africa.
How much did you sell the property for? And whose property was it? Did it belong to the Zimbabwean government?
Yes, it was a property of the Zimbabwean government. It was in Kenilworth, Cape Town. If I recall, it was sold for about 3.7 million rand.
Did the Zimbabwean government try to stop the auctioning of the property or not?
Yeah. Well, we went to, on behalf of the Zimbabwean farmers, we went to the High Court in South Africa, which we won the case. Then the Zimbabwean government refused to comply with the court order. So we went to the Supreme Court of Appeal, the same thing. Then we went to the Constitutional Court, and we won on all three counts. And then when we started initiating this process of selling the property, suddenly we saw that there were attempts by the South African government or the Zimbabwean government rather to prevent us from doing so, but they were not able to pay the money that they were requested or required to pay by the court order in time, and that is why we were able to sell the property.
What was the amount that was supposed to be paid to the farmer at that point in time? Because you sold the property for 3.5, you said.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more. I can't give you an exact figure. As I said, there were 4,000 people chased off their land. And
so that was only one farmer, or was it just one case that
No, it was on behalf of a group of farmers. So this was one particular case that we've implemented.
Now, what is the situation now in terms of the other farmers that you still need to assist?
Well, we are still in the process, so we are still in discussion. Our legal team is still in discussion with the Farmers Union and with many of the farmers who are from Zimbabwe on, discussing ways in which we can assist them. So at this stage, we're waiting for feedback from our legal team on what the way forward would be.
Are you looking at perhaps auctioning off other property of the Zimbabwean government in other SADC countries?
Well, if that's possible, we are certainly looking into it. There are a lot of legal technicalities that we would need to get by. So if it's possible to do so, we would certainly do so.
Did any of the farmers see some of the cash, or did it all go just to legal costs at this point in time?
Well, at this point in time, it went to legal costs that the Zimbabwean government is forced to pay. So that is why we are really trying to see how we can go further with this campaign to see if we can get to compensation for the farmers.
Just a little background, is some of the farmers that was thrown off their farms, are some of them back in Zimbabwe or not, or are they still out of the country?
Well, the ones that we have contact with were chased out of Zimbabwe, and they are too scared to go back to Zimbabwe, especially now with them being involved with these legal proceedings. That they fear for their lives. They believe that if they go back to Zimbabwe, they might not come out alive. So there are still farmers left, white farmers left in Zimbabwe, but it's a very small group, very few. You can almost count them, on one hand. So we are very concerned, and the effects of this policy you can also see in terms of the economic in-sinking in Zimbabwe, the unemployment rate, the fact that Zimbabwe now have to suddenly import fruits and vegetables where they used to be an exporter and so forth.
What do you think are some of the lessons, Mr. Roots, that South Africa can learn from the Zimbabwe scenario in terms of land reform and restitution?
Well, I think you can, if you want to talk about lessons to be learned, you can break it down in two aspects. So one aspect is the policy of land reform and isn't working or not. And we can see some of the same problems that Zimbabwe is confronted with now. Some of them we can see, but to a lesser extent in South Africa already, because our land reform policy is not as aggressive. For example, the MDC says that unemployment in Zimbabwe is 85%. We heard, and one of the reasons therefore is that these farms that have been redistributed are not productive anymore. We heard in South Africa as well that agricultural land that has been redistributed, I think the Minister of Agriculture said 95% of them are not productive. So that's a big problem. And that's why Zimbabwe is now an importer and not an exporter anymore, and South Africa as well. So the policy is not working. It's bad for food security, it's bad for the economy, it's bad for race relations. But then on the other side, you can also say, what can we learn in terms of the process and in terms of protest or making a difference? And we spoke with these Zimbabwean farmers, and what they said is, the big difference, people often ask, is South Africa the next Zimbabwe? And what the Zimbabwean farmer said to us, the big difference between South Africa and Zimbabwe is, in Zimbabwe they tried a lot of ventures, but they didn't have a well-organized civil society. And that is what we have in South Africa. So I believe the role of civil society mustn't be underestimated. And I think that's the reason why we can have more accountability in our country, because civil society is much stronger.
And just briefly, how do you think that process would work if there is land distribution in South Africa?
Well, we would see. We have different talks from different political parties. The big question is, will the willing buyer, willing seller policy fall away?
Well, that's already falling away, according to policy.
It appears that it is falling away, but that means that we are moving away from a free market system. We are moving towards a more socialist or communist state. I think it will have a tremendous impact on the South African economy.
Mr. Roots, thank you so much for your time joining us here in studio. That was Aaron Roots, the spokesperson of AfriForum. And of course, you can join in the discussion that we're asking you this morning. As that very important question, the land reform situation in Zimbabwe. We asked Mr. Roots, and we also asked our previous speaker, what do you make of it? What can South Africa learn from Zimbabwe's land reform program? I want you to talk to us on the Facebook page, almost said weekend name now. You can let us know on Newsroom. That's the Facebook page. If you like us there, you become part and parcel of this growing informed family here on Newsroom. You can also let me know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. Well, Eben will keep us updated with some of the comments in a short while, so you can let us know. But in fact, let's take a quick look at some of the comments before we wait for them to cross over. The city of Johannesburg, meanwhile, Mayor the Park Style says that the illegal work stoppage of striking Pikitup workers can no longer be tolerated. Now, he was briefing the media on the status of the strike at the Sandton Library north of Johannesburg. Now, here are some of the comments that we've seen already. This one from Nazreen Kassam says, going through the Twitter seems a mess. Hijacking, Pikitup strikes, electricity is off. What the heck is going on at Nazreen Kassam? The Wolf of Recruitment, what a name, at Batsetsane Pule. This Pikitup strike affects the poor more than anybody else. You should see what Alex looks like, says the Wolf of Recruitment. Renee says, fire Pikitup illegal strikers. Millions of able-bodied men and women who desperately need employment. They can do the job, says Renee. You have to fire all the workers that's on strike. David Katz says, City of Johannesburg, can I take the Pikitup fee off my March bill? I would like to do the same, David. But what was it, the fourth strike? In fact, that tweet just went into the rubbish bin as well. Chris Wellsmith says, Pikitup is costing Joburg Municipality millions. I wonder which councillor has his or her hand in that pie. Fire Pikitup bosses, says Chris. Now there you can see some of the pictures. Unbelievable. I tell you, driving through the city is no joy at all. It looked a little better this morning, I can tell you, because the city is busy with some operations to clean it up. And it looks like that's working, but it seems like the striking workers are coming back during the day and re-litter again. What do you make of that? Well, let's take a look at our Facebook page. And we start off here in Johannesburg. seems here police are investigating the cause of the violence in Katlehong on the Gauteng East Rand, where one person is reported to have been killed, and that was denied a little bit earlier by the interview we had while looting a foreign-owned shop. That was yesterday. I think it was the day before that probably happened. Producers and experts in the sugar industry from across the African continent are spending this week in Maputo, there in Mozambique, for the 6th annual Sugar Conference. And finally, record winners, Egypt, were among the heavyweights who moved to the brink of African Nations Cup qualifications on Tuesday. But 2013 champions Nigeria, can you believe Nigeria, are out? And South Africa's hopes of making next year's final are hanging by a thread, and a very thin thread, I might add. And for more news and updates, you can follow us on Facebook. I told you earlier, if you like us there, you become part of the Informed here on Newsroom. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back after that.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Hello again, you're still with us here on Newsroom now. Just a quick report. Sporadic incidents have been reported of some taxi operators stopping other taxis from operating and forcing passengers out of these taxis in the Durban central city or central business district this morning. Now we can report scores of people in the city have been left stranded in areas far from their destinations, as some taxi drivers are not getting into the city for fear of being attacked. Police are also monitoring the situation. This comes after Santaku and the KwaZulu-Natal Taxi Alliance called for a stay away. They say the police keep impounding their taxis without justification. Now, Ayanda Mhlongo is on the street. She's joining us for a quick update. Very good morning to you, Ayanda. Just give us a quick update. What's happening?
A very good morning to you, Eben. Yes, it's been quite a difficult morning for commuters. Last night we got news very late, in fact, of the stay away, and that message wasn't able to get through to commuters on time so that they could make alternative arrangements. There was a bit of confusion this morning, Eben, with regard to whether or not the strike was continuing. As I said, the message had not gone to also to some operators, so there were taxis that were operating as early as about 5 o'clock, but from around 6:30, and we've been on the streets since very, very early this morning as well. From around, as I said, 6:30, the taxis then started offloading people along the freeways, and people then forced to make their way, walk into the cities. In other areas, of course, where the message did get through yesterday from the early hours of this morning, those commuters have not been able to use a public or taxis, opting for alternative transport. The buses that have been going around, they are packed. We also understand that trains as well are packed to a capacity. Where I'm standing is at the Bothas Park, and this is where a gathering point where the taxi operators are going to be meeting to discuss the stay away and the way forward. In fact, just to my right, they have started gathering and they're waiting for the Santaco leadership to speak to them. And just quickly on there, just across the road, you can see a Metro police there. They have blockaded one part of the road. We understand that there is a group that has started marching. It's not a legal march. They've just gathered together and they are marching, making their way here to Bothas Park, where they will be meeting. But Eben, we will of course be monitoring the story. We are going to be on the ground throughout the day, and we'll be updating as to what happens throughout the day.
Ayanda, fantastic update. Thank you very much. Ayanda Mhlongo is right on the scene. Of course, thousands of people's lives are really being affected in Durban by that strike. We'll be back at the top of the hour. Hopefully there's some developments in that story. Ayanda will keep us updated. We'll be back live in Durban in about 15 or 20 minutes time. Of course, right now we're dealing with land reform in Zimbabwe, and we know it officially began in 1980 with the signing of the then Lancaster House Agreement as an effort to move more equitably distribute land between black subsistence farmers at the time and white Zimbabweans of European ancestry who traditionally enjoyed superior political and economic status in that country. Now, the program's targets were intended to alter the ethnic balance of land ownership. Inequalities in land ownership were inflated by a growing overpopulation, depletion of overutilized tracts, and escalating poverty in subsistence areas, parallel with the underutilization of land on commercial farms. Now, political analyst Levan Doe is in our studio in Polokwane this morning to give us his views on Zimbabwe land reform. Mr. Doe, thank you for joining us. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Eben. Good morning to the viewers.
We're asking our viewers a question today, Mr. Doe, and I would like you to maybe start there. What do you think South Africa can learn from Zimbabwe's land reform process, both the good and the bad?
Well, I think the land question has been in the lips of a lot of South Africans for some time. But I think the first thing to learn will be that it is not easy for those that are in possession of the land to just hand it over back voluntarily. It's not easy as expected. And if black South Africans think that will be easy, it might not be easy. That's the first question that we need to learn as South Africans. At the same time, we're lucky that Zimbabwe has entered into a program of land restitution which had its own advantages and disadvantages. And obviously, we know more of the disadvantages, that a lot of land has been taken from white farmers in Zimbabwe, and it has ended up not being productive. And that has led into a situation where a lot of people in Zimbabwe end up suffering. Another aspect that we need to look at is to look at the fact that when the program, the land restitution program, was in place in Zimbabwe from 2000, it created serious diplomatic and economic relations negatively on the part of Zimbabwe, and that had serious negative impacts as well on Zimbabwe. What South Africa has to learn is that indeed a lot of people in South Africa are still in need of land, and a lot of land is still in the hands of the white minority in South Africa. And I think the government of South Africa under Minister Nkwinti are actually doing their best to ensure that there is a process that is done following certain legal procedures in order to avoid what happened in Zimbabwe. But another issue that we need to learn as well is that when the process is being delayed and the masses get frustrated, they'll end up behaving like what the Zimbabweans did. It means that in South Africa, we need to ensure through our government, as a law-abiding citizen and a nation, we need to ensure that the process is fastened in order to avoid the frustrations similar to those that the Zimbabweans went through.
When you reflect on Zimbabwe's land reform process now, more than 20 years later, has it failed?
Well, in Zimbabwe, you will actually realize, Eben, that from 2000 up until now, Zimbabwe has been suffering mainly from serious diplomatic and trade relations because of the nature of the approach that Zimbabwe had actually adopted. Whether it was out of frustrations or whether it was out of the red tapes that were created, it's another issue. But the manner in which the land question in Zimbabwe was being addressed left a number of citizens, or the majority of the citizens in Zimbabwe, being frustrated. Obviously, after they've taken that approach, it had its own negative implications. And I think that is what South Africa has to learn. In order for South Africa to avoid to take the route that Zimbabweans have taken, they need to develop processes that are faster, and citizens must have confidence in those processes so that they don't end up being frustrated by saying that we've waited for too long. But another aspect that I think we need to look at, Eben, is that we need to develop our own citizens in South Africa to ensure that after they've taken over the land, or if they've got access to the land, they should actually make sure that they actually reproduce, so that we must have sufficient food for the survival of our own people. If you look at the education system in South Africa, very few students are involved in the programs that would encourage them to make sure that we've got sufficient food security in South Africa and make sure that we reproduce more. And that is where we also need to come in. Another aspect is that we need those that are having access to the land, who are producing, to transfer skills to those that have got access to land. And that is where partnerships have to come in, so that we don't find ourselves waiting when we've got nothing to produce as a nation.
You talk about low production and skills transfer and so forth, and these are all good in theory, but right now, we've heard the numbers earlier, 95% of our farms are suffering the same low production. How do we overcome that? It seems as if there's not the goodwill to make this work. How do we overcome this?
Well, if you look at, for an example, in Limpopo, in the areas of Libuvubu, in the areas of Zanin, there has been areas where land has been transferred to the former owners of that land through the Land Claims Commission. And what then happened is that most of the people, because of the lack of skills, because they didn't have sufficient knowledge on what to do on the land, they ended up not doing anything. What I think should be the best way of addressing this matter would be for the government to ensure that there is sufficient training or sufficient programs to assist the people that are occupying the land to be able to produce more. Another aspect will be for those that have been in that area for some time, to provide services in order to transfer skills to those that do not have sufficient skills to reproduce in the land. Another important aspect that we need to look at through the Land Claims Commission is that we've got a lot of our own people that have been given land, and instead of reproducing in the land, they're actually doing nothing. And I think that is one other area that as South Africans we need to be very much worried about, that instead of doing something productive in the land, we're actually not doing anything.
Mr. Ndoh, thank you for joining us. Political analyst Lever Ndoh giving us his views on land reform processes, both in Zimbabwe and South Africa. We're asking you the question today: what can we as South Africa learn from Zimbabwe's land reform processes? There's the question. Legitimate question. It is very much on people's minds. Let's have a look at some of the comments that have been coming in so far. Now, Craig Makati says, SABC Newsroom, we can learn that applying our minds can help solve a lot of problems. Talking about land reform, land restitution. That one from Craig Makati. Then Gift says, SA should desist from following Zimbabwe's radical and aggressive land restructuring, as it has deeper economic repercussions, says Gift. This one again from Craig, we can learn that applying our minds amounts to peaceful resolution of problems. That's the same one that we've had there. This one from Gift again. It says SA needs to strike a delicate balance on social justice, agricultural production and race when rethinking its land reform process. Yes, we live in a time where food security is uppermost on everyone's minds. Food prices are going through the roof, and we're having this discussion around food prices a little bit later in the week. It'll be a theme on Friday, so we look forward to bringing you that one as well. Time now for a weather update with Phil Hawkins.
Yeah, thank you so much and a very good morning to you. Let's take a look at what's going on in terms of your weather. First of all, we start off with taking a look at a lot of cloud cover all the way throughout South Africa's southwestern areas there. We've already seen quite a bit of rainfall in the area. That's brought in by a lower pressure system, which of course is bringing in a front as well. Temperatures coming down as a result. Central Africa and Western Africa's southern coastline also seeing a lot of cloud cover in this region. We're seeing that now extending up towards Addis Ababa and the surrounding areas. In terms of your rainfall, what does this mean for today? Well, it means isolated showers throughout most of Central Africa here. We are going to see a stronger band of cloud cover as well as some stormy systems developing over the northern parts of Mozambique here for today. As we move through today though and into tomorrow, what this all means for us is that we're going to see a slightly more clear one in the east, and the west remains very, very wet there. Now, in terms of your local temperatures here, Bloemfontein peaking at 31 degrees. Temperatures in Cape Town are at about 19. And we're seeing, as I said, cloud cover and rainfall already expected there as a result of that lower pressure system. Beautiful sunny skies in most of southern Africa for today. That begins to change as we move further north. Lilongwe's at 28 degrees and Lusaka shares the same high. Kilimanjaro peaks at 35 with isolated showers there. Those showers don't quite make it towards the northern regions around Juba and Khartoum. Both of these areas sharing a 38-degree maximum now. What you can expect in these regions is a little bit of cloud cover there. Addis Ababa, very, very small chance of rainfall for today with some low-level and mid-level cloud cover forecast as well. Riyadh's at 28 degrees, Dubai 34, and the sun is shining. As you can see, Damascus and Tehran still struggling to get a little bit warmer. They're 19 and 15 degree maximums, despite a fair amount of cloud cover, a mild 24-degree high for Cairo. Take a look at West Africa's northern regions though. This is where we're going to see a massive temperature difference. These areas are much warmer than we've seen over the past few months, so change of season definitely has arrived. 27 in Marrakesh, 32 in Algiers, as well as Tunis. Definitely much, much warmer than we're used to. Now what we're seeing is isolated showers developing through Monrovia towards Abidjan. They don't quite make it to Lagos yet today, but we are going to see some dense cloud cover over the area. Rainfall possibly to follow into tomorrow. What we're also going to see is sunny skies over Niamey, 44-degree maximums there, so temperatures soaring all the way into the mid-40s. 36-degree highs for Bangui, and dense cloud cover means it is going to be a bit of a rainy one around the western parts of Central Africa here. Brazzaville in the Congo, 31-degree maximums. Now, this is where you can contact us with your feedback or queries, weather at sabc.co.za. That is our email address. Alternatively, give us a call, 011 714 5077. That's where I leave your weather for now. Do stay tuned.
Very good afternoon. You're watching the Midday Report.
Lunchtime news amplified.
But for now, this is what they call home. Their hope to shift to a higher ground seems to be against the tide.
Midday Report provides you with more than just news stories.
I just want Port Elizabeth to know that they own a world-class theatre.
Good afternoon. You're with the news at 1 in the headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. This is News Live. I'm Natasha Thorpe. Let's take a quick look at what's coming up in your headlines.
Good afternoon and welcome to A View from the House.
For all things news, tune in to Midday Report weekdays at 12 noon, only on the SABC News channel.
As stories are broken around the world, SABC makes sure you do not miss out. As the stories unfold throughout the day, News at 8 updates all newsworthy stories worldwide. Globally, we are there. Locally, we leave no story untold. Make a date with News at 8 every Saturday and Sunday on SABC News, Africa's news leader.
technology isn't all scary. There's also fun stuff like gaming.
Lots of women do play games, whether it's on their phones or their tablets.
Then there are Africans who are using new tools to make other people's lives much easier.
We typed the whole CV on a small, QWERTY Nokia phone.
For all these and other technology and social media news, join me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC News.
Tonight in an SABC exclusive news expose, we show you how firearm proficiency certificates are fraudulently sold for a few thousand rand.
What you did was illegal. Do you at least acknowledge that? What you did is illegal.
I say it could be probably illegal.
Nigeria is Africa's second largest tomato producer.
The chief executive of Enrisco says he started the company with a capital of $75 million.
The problem now is that the market has been created in China.
He says that doing business in the country is becoming more difficult every day.
It's 10:00 hours Central Africa time on this Wednesday, the 30th of March 2016. This is Newsroom on SABC News, Channel 404. Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the second hour as we broadcast live from Auckland Park, our studios here in Johannesburg, to the rest of the African continent. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock. As you know, we're also streaming live on YouTube with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. Our question of the day is, what do you think South Africa can learn from Zimbabwe's land reform program? That's what I would like to gather from you on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on our Facebook page. But first, let's take a look at your news headlines. Scores of foreign nationals have fled Katlehong on Gauteng's East Rand in overnight looting and violence. A group of 29 Cape Town University students who stormed the gates of Parliament last year are expected to appear in the Cape Town Magistrates Court today. And the World Health Organization says that West Africa's Ebola outbreak no longer constitutes a threat to international public health. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to your news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning to you.
Elvis, it's a good morning if you're not a South African sports fan. It's been a tough couple of days for South Africans, but
hey,
anyway,
Bafana.
Bafana and the Proteas. Good morning. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
It's by luck if we would definitely. It's going to be tough. We won't make it, I think.
Bafana's hopes of qualifying for AFCON 2017 fade away. They draw 0-0 with Cameroon in Durban.
Look, I'm just a guy that's going to work hard at these players. That's the bottom line. I know the players support me. I've got very good relationships with the players. I work ethic and management.
The Proteas arrive back in country with tough questions to answer.
It's a big, exciting match, but our feet are firmly on the ground and we're going to be wanting to perform our plans as best we can again. Yeah.
Meanwhile, back at the T20 World Cup, New Zealand, the only unbeaten team at the World Cup so far, are taking nothing for granted ahead of the semi-final against England today. And that's what we've got for you in the sports in about 20 minutes or so. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Our top story this hour. Scores of foreign nationals have fled Katlehong on Gauteng's East Rand in overnight looting and violence. Locals clash with foreign shop owners who try to reopen their businesses. They've been barred from the area since earlier this month after a Pakistani shop owner allegedly shot and killed a local and injured 4 others. Police continue to monitor the area this morning. Our reporter Griselda Lewis and cameraman Herbert Mamela were in Katlehong last night.
Running battles,
Ekurhuleni Metro Police had their hands full. Again stripped of their livelihood, foreign nationals salvaging what remains of yet another looting spree.
Well, this is all that remains from hours of overnight looting. Many foreign nationals have fled this area to the local police station. They say remaining in the township would be a risk to their lives.
At the police station, the devastation palpable.
Big problem, Baba.
But the refuge they sought here was short-lived.
It's problematic. People are not yet relaxed. They are still at anger. You try to go in now, you will be killed. Your life is in risk. Your life is in risk, and already some of your guys, they were assaulted, stabbed, shops looted.
We are not living here. We don't want to put our lives in risk. We're scared, very scared. So I have to stay in police station, otherwise no way.
I don't have safe place to stay and to sleep also.
Back in the township, the affected shops being closed off, while others are already counting the losses.
Because umnyango bowungavuleki so into bevele bayenza bavele bakhula phezulu.
Nosive Majukulana leases her garage to a foreign national for business. Now it's all gone. More police reinforcements were brought in overnight. Crisalda Lewis, SABC News, Katlehong on the East Strand.
Meanwhile, Gauteng police spokesperson Nokolo Kweza has dismissed reports that a person has died during the overnight looting and violence in Katlehong last night. She says the situation is calm and police continue to monitor the situation.
We don't have reports of a person being stabbed, nor shot, nor killed. At the moment, the situation in Katlehong is calm, and the police members are patrolling the area and monitoring. There was a meeting yesterday where amongst the locals, some of the locals wanting the foreign nationals to come back in the area. Some of them did not want them to come back in the area. They threatened to loot the shops. However, the nationals that want the foreign nationals to come back assisted the police in stopping the attempt to loot. And as a result, the situation was brought into calm. At the moment, no arrest yet, but we are investigating a case of public violence.
Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa says that the Buy Local Summit is very important as it brings together key role players in the business sector, and it will help grow the local economy. SABC News spoke to the Deputy President Ramaphosa and asked him how significant the summit is for emerging and small business.
It's a platform that brings together a number of key role players in the business sector, but more importantly, to get them to focus on how we can help to grow our economy and create jobs through buying locally made goods. So here we want to promote the notion and the idea and raise the level of consciousness of South Africans that they should buy local. There are many, many businesses that are creating goods here in South Africa. We need to support them and help them to use that as a springboard to be able to showcase their goods internationally. So this has two purposes: for local proliferation of goods that are made here, as well as for showcasing goods that are made in South Africa for the export market.
Now, Deputy President, the issue of skills development, do we have the necessary skills to compete with the developed countries and the developing markets as well?
Skills is a challenge for us here in South Africa, largely because of our past, because the past misrulers of our country ensured that the majority of our people do not get skills that are well tuned or attuned to modern economies where they can make really good goods and provide good services. But the government has started a process and it is deepening the process of skilling South Africans. Yesterday we were at another summit, which is the Human Resource Development Council Summit, where we were talking about skills and proliferating skills, and that is why we are focusing on establishing colleges where artisans will be trained and where many other professionals will also be trained. So we are reskilling our country and making sure that we have a skill base that can produce goods that will compete well in the modern economy.
Now, Proudly South Africa, I see the CEO is here once again. We spoke to him earlier on. Now, they're saying that government, as well as the private sector, including ordinary people as consumers, they should buy locally produced products. Is government doing that?
Well, government is doing that in the main. Government is the biggest procurer of goods and services in our economy. So they are doing that in the main, but we want to refocus more and more on ensuring that we buy locally made goods. And we want to raise the level of consciousness of everyone, of the private sector, as well as of government and various other institutions. It is only when we raise that level of consciousness that people become more and more aware that we should be proudly South African and buy goods that are made here, that we will be able to inject life and growth into our economy as well. So government is at the forefront of this and will continue to be at the forefront of this.
Now, sporadic incidents have been reported of some taxi operators stopping other taxis from operating and forcing passengers out of taxis in the Durban CBD. Scores of people in the city have been left stranded in areas far from their destination as some taxi drivers are not getting into the city for fear of being attacked. Police are monitoring the situation. Now, this comes after Santaco and the KwaZulu-Natal Taxi Alliance called for a stay away. They say the police keep impounding their taxis without justification. Ayanda Mshlongo joins us on the line to give us an update. Ayanda, a very good morning to you. We understand that the situation is escalating. What exactly is going on there?
Good morning to you, Albert. Yes, absolutely. The situation has turned into quite a bad situation now. In fact, there was a meeting earlier on when I came to you just at Bothas Park where there was a meeting. It seems like that meeting just did not finish because after a few minutes of the attack operators having gathered, a group carrying sticks and other weapons then decided to move away and move around now into the Warwick area, the Warwick Junction area. It's an area, part of Durban, that has a lot of taxi ranks. And so they're now going through the taxi ranks, offloading people, ensuring that the taxis are parked and that they are not operating. They've also thrown stones at some buses. We've heard some shots now, just a moment ago, and I'm seeing a number of police officers racing down this main road to go to where the shots are coming from. So I do not know at the moment what is happening there, but basically the city is now under complete gridlock, I can say. Police are closing off all entrances leading into the Durban CBD. There was motorists as well now, just ordinary motorists who seem to be, they are not safe. Some of their cars are also being stoned. So at the moment, it is quite tense. We are just, I am walking, in fact, trying to follow this group, but things have turned pretty violent at the moment, Albert.
Now, taxi strikes have a tendency of turning very violent, and as you observe there, it seems there's a sense of tenseness in the area or in the air. Are we likely, from what you can observe, are we likely to see this escalating even further?
We understand that, yes, it's not just happening here in the Durban CBD, or in this location rather where I am, but also other parts of the city as well. We're hearing there that situation is getting out of hand. Police, in fact, are having their hands full because they're now trying to cover all the main entryways into the city from the N2 and the N3. And we understand that on the other side near the Durban station area along Umgeni Road, there has been some incidents there, and now just to be reported as well. We are picking them from some of the taxi operators that say that on that side there are some vehicles as well that has been stoned. Even ordinary remote people in their cars, they have been turned away. Literally now think that these operators that are part of the stay-away do not want any type of vehicle that is going to be moving around in the city. But of course, the police are out in full force. It's the SAPS working very closely with the Metro Police. And as I said, they're now blocking off the main entries into the city of Durban to ensure that everyone is safe and to basically keep motorists and other cars away until they're able to contain the situation.
Have you spoken to some of the commuters, and how are they getting around right now in Durban?
From the early hours of this morning, our commuters, of course, those that are closer in areas that are closer to the city of Durban, people would know in the areas like Mayville, Sherwood, even as far as Westville. Sadly, those people have had to make their way on foot into the city of Durban. Then there are those from the townships, from Umlazi and areas just outside of Durban. They've had to find alternative transport, buses and trains. Buses have been coming in, and you can see that they are packed to capacity. But the police have also now advised that buses stay away from the city. Trains as well, we understand that a lot of people have decided to commute into the city by train. But for most of the people, they're having to walk. We've had a chance to speak to some of the commuters, and they're saying really that it is not fair to them. They are loyal taxi commuters, and but for them, it's the notice, the fact that they were not told on time so that they could make alternative arrangements. So some of them are really, really not happy with the situation and saying that it is unfair to them, and they wish that at least they've been given enough time and notice so they can report to their places of employment as well, and just to stay away. Because other people, as I said earlier on, in the morning there was some confusion. There were taxis that brought people into the cities. The problem now is going to be those people need to get back home, and once the stay away is now full-blown, which means that those people are going to be stranded in the city and are not going to be able to go back home.
Are you aware, Yanda, of any talks between Santaco and the KwaZulu-Natal Taxi Alliance with the police at this point in time?
At the point in time, no, we understand that the meeting that is going to go ahead is between the KZN and the Taxi Alliance as well as the Santaco. They will be meeting with MEC for Transport, Willis and Khunu. That meeting was supposed to start at 10 o'clock. It seems to be it's going to be a bit delayed because the Santaco leadership now is trying its best to also try and calm down its members. So they are out here on the streets, but they have said that there is a meeting that is scheduled with the government that is going to take place at midday today.
Ayanda Mhlongo, thank you so much for your time and giving us that update there from Durban. Let's move on now to news on the continent. The World Health Organization says that West Africa's Ebola outbreak no longer constitutes a threat to international public health. It's declared an end to a nearly 20-month outbreak that killed around 11,300 people.
In terms of the original transmission chains, these have all stopped now. The original transmission chains that were ongoing at the time the FIC was declared and subsequent to that, these have been stopped, meaning the countries have met the criteria of a 42-day observation period after the last case twice tested negative, and then an additional enhanced surveillance period of a further 90 days. The most recent country to achieve that, of course, was Guinea, that passed that 90-day extended surveillance period on the 27th of March. What's happening right now in Guinea is a new cluster or little outbreak related to a reintroduction from the survivor population. So this in some ways is distinct and is one of the ongoing risks that have to be managed as the outbreak is brought to its complete conclusion.
Now, a group of 29 Cape Town University students who stormed the gates of Parliament last year are expected to appear in the Cape Town Magistrates Court today. Among them are the sons of struggle hero Frank Chikane, UCT Vice-Chancellor Mac Price, Anglican Archbishop Thabo Makgoba and Advocate Wim Trenggrove. Also in the group is prominent student activist Chumani Makwele, who initiated the Rhodes Must Fall campaign that led to the eventual removal of the Cecil John Rhodes statue from UCT last year. They are facing charges of public violence and attending an illegal gathering. In October last year, the students clashed with riot police when they marched on Parliament as part of the #FeesMustFall campaign. Here in Johannesburg, city officials have intensified cleanup operations under heavy security. Now, they are trying to deal with the mess that was left in the wake of the Pikitup strike, which has entered a fourth week. Disciplinary action against 4,000 employees has begun.
Undeterred by disciplinary steps against them, Pikitup workers continue to defy a court order spurred by distrust.
Mfikwe MMC already said that we are dismissed before ATC, which means what we are going for there, we are not happy. We can't trust the results of those cases. Secondly, they will never go back until they get their benchmark payments.
But while city officials have launched an investigation into the Pikitup MD, they insist Amanda Neya is not going anywhere for now. The strike has been characterized by violence and intimidation. Several waste collection trucks have been attacked and workers targeted. 19 workers have been arrested for charges ranging from violence to attempted murder.
The actions of the striking workers that place the health and safety of residents at risk is regretted. There can be no justification for unprotected work stoppages and the trashing of the city.
But disciplinary processes are now underway. Private security, Metro Police, and even SABC have been roped in to beef up security. SABC News, Johannesburg.
The Constitutional Court is set to hand down judgment in the Nkandla matter tomorrow. The highest court in the land has to rule whether President Jacob Zuma has to comply with the Public Protector's recommendations that he should pay for some of the upgrades at his Nkandla residence in KwaZulu-Natal. The Economic Freedom Fighters and the Democratic Alliance brought an application to court earlier this year. The DA says they believe the judgment will be a defining moment for the country. Next door to our neighbors, hundreds of Mozambicans continue to cross over the border into neighboring Malawi. Now they are fleeing fighting between the main opposition group, Renamo, and government forces.
About 100 kilometers south of Malawi's capital, Lilongwe, civilians escaping conflict in neighboring Mozambique continue to arrive at the Kapisi refugee camp. The United Nations Refugee Agency says about 11,500 Mozambican refugees have crossed into Malawi since December. Refugees spoke of having fled deadly attacks by Renamo, Mozambique's main opposition group. The refugee influx is putting a strain on Malawi's stretched resources. The UNHCR has expressed concern on the growing number of refugees.
From the perspective of the UN, to really improve these conditions, with this number of people, the relocation is the better option.
Lehana Tsutitsi, SABC News.
Now, more details are emerging about the hijacker who used the fake suicide belt to force an Egypt air flight to land in Cyprus yesterday. The Egyptian government says he has a criminal record for forgery and is also a suspect in a number of fraud, theft and narcotics cases. Earlier officials in Cyprus said that he appeared to be mentally unstable. Egyptian authorities say the hijacker, Saif al-Din Mustafa, and his carry-on baggage were thoroughly checked at the airport in Alexandria, and that he assembled the fake explosive belt from permitted personal belongings in his hand luggage. He was arrested after giving himself up at Cyprus's Larnaca airport. All the passengers and crew were released unharmed. The passengers included 2 South African-based Greek Orthodox clerics. And that is what they say is lovers in the air, because apparently there's also a lover's quarrel involved. But maybe it's just speculation. Meanwhile, the U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump's campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, had been charged with assaulting a journalist at a campaign event. He's charged with simple battery over his encounter with the former Breitbart reporter Michelle Fields. Police allege that earlier this month, after a news conference in Florida, that he grabbed her arm when she tried to ask Trump a question, leaving her with a bruise. According to a police report, a court date has been set for May the 4th. Lewandowski plans to plead not guilty. Now that is what you call dramatic. from the US. But let's take a break right now. Kendall Makamate is standing by with your sports news after the break.
The deepening hunger crisis in Malawi is threatening the survival of children.
And also it is the life-threatening part of malnutrition.
Malawi is facing its worst food crisis in 9 years.
Mugabe is the world's oldest sitting head of state, ahead of Queen Elizabeth of Britain.
The veteran leader seeks to temporarily forget his party's problems and instead focus on his legacy.
But he shows no sign of slowing down or stepping down from power after 36 years in office.
A very good afternoon. You're watching the Midday Report.
Lunchtime news amplified.
But for now, this is what they call home. Their hope to shift to a higher ground seems to be against the tide.
Midday Report provides you with more than just news stories.
I just want Port Elizabeth to know that they own a world-class theatre.
Good afternoon. You're with the news at 1 in the headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. This is News Live. I'm Natasha Thorpe. Let's take a quick look at what's coming up in your headlines.
Good afternoon and welcome to A View from the House.
For all things news, tune in to Midday Report weekdays at 12 noon, only on the SABC News channel.
Good morning, welcome back. I'm Kendall Makamat and I've got your sports on Newsroom. Our top story in this bulletin is about football, where South Africa's chances of qualifying for the 2017 Gabon AFCON hang by a thread after Shakes Mashaba's troops played to a goalless draw against Cameroon in Durban. The home side are currently in third place in the group with 3 points after 4 games, trailing second place minnows Mauritania by 3 points.
This is the Africa Cup of Nations qualifier between South Africa and Cameroon.
After dropping 2 valuable points in the reverse fixture, Bafana went into the match needing maximum points to keep their slender chances of qualifying for Gabon alive. The home side went into the fixture third on Group M with 2 draws and a loss, trailing leaders Cameroon by 5 points. While on the other side, the visitors' boss demanded more from his side after their disappointing 2-2 draw against Bafana at home. South Africa started well, dominating position, however, with little to show for it. Apart from lack of finishing, Bafana struggled for rhythm in the first half. While South Africa was looking to utilize their speed to head the opposition, the visitors resorted to set pieces to pressure the home side.
Good steer.
Unlike the first half, the second stanza was more entertaining, with the home side piling the pressure in search of the opener. Lack of firepower up front wasn't the only thing concerning the Bafana coach, with the defense also looking shaky at times. The home side was denied a penalty on the stroke of the 90th minute. In the end, both teams shared the spoils, with the visitors being the happier of the two teams. They have protected their lead at the summit of Group M with 8 points after 4 games. Joseph Mohale, SABC News.
And in the other 2017 Africa Cup of Nations qualifying matches, 2013 champions Nigeria failed to qualify after falling to a 1-0 defeat in Egypt in their Group G match. The match in Alexandria became a virtual all-or-nothing tie for Nigeria after Chad withdrew from the group on Sunday. They cited financial difficulties, so all the results from their matches were erased. With just 1 game remaining and only the group winners to qualify, Nigeria cannot make up the 5 points deficit to table toppers Egypt. Now, Ramadan Sobi's 65th minute winner puts Egypt on the verge of qualification. Tanzania in June will book their place, and Gabon with any result better than a 3-0 defeat.
And it's Egypt that's grabbed the lead here in Alexandria. And how important will that goal?
That will be Egypt facing Tanzania in June. Now, South Africa's national cricket team, the Proteas, returned home after yet another disappointing sojourn at an ICC event. The Proteas were dumped out of the competition after winning just 2 games in the group, which saw them once again eliminated during the quarterfinals at a Cricket World Cup. Now, moving on to other cricketing news.
Head home to loved ones after facing an unforgiving media on their arrival from the T20 World Cup. A handful of Proteas players landed at the OR Tambo International Airport. The number of fans that met them to welcome them home, perhaps a testament of their performance in India. Once again, nothing went right for a team boasting the best batsman and spinner in the world cricket.
But it's a tough one to put our finger on. We just didn't play the big moments well enough. You think of our games that we lost. The game against England, if someone said you've got 230 to beat England in the first game, you'd have signed up for that. So it's a tough one to put our finger on. It's really difficult to explain at the moment.
There's been a mixed bag of results from the team in recent time. Test series losses to India and England, followed by an ODI series victory against England, then a T20 series loss to Australia. So how does South Africa judge them as a collective?
Yeah, I would say to the fans that, I mean, we feel exactly the same, and the fans have got every right to feel like that. It's disappointment. When you've got a great team on paper like we do, you expect results. The T20 team has been a very successful one of late, but we didn't produce once again on an ICC tournament. The T20 World Cup is a tough one. You play your easy game is supposed to be Afghanistan, but they're just as good on those conditions. Yeah, and then when you speak about different formats, obviously our one-day cricket team has improved a lot. 2 years ago we were in a bit of a hole and we wanted to improve, and we've done that. And we rebuild that team, and the test team is in that stage now. So, yeah, I think from a public point of view, I understand what you're saying. You have to go write a similar article about similar things. But for now, this is just obviously about the T20 cricket.
For cricket-loving fans, it sounds a little too familiar as they hold their breath for the next Cricket World Cup in England and Wales in 3 years' time. Tabiso Sitole, SABC News, Kempton Park.
Staying with more cricketing news, Pakistan head coach Waqar Younis has offered to resign after his team were knocked out of the World 2020 at the Super 10 stage.
It is.
Pakistan exited the tournament after winning just 1 of their 4 games in Group 2. The team, captained by Shahidi Afridi, beat Bangladesh but lost to New Zealand, Australia and arch-rivals India.
I placed my hands together and begged for forgiveness, literally from the nation, from all those who shouted slogans when we were exiting the airport, or those at NCA who take care of us. If they send me home, that is not an issue. I will go home. If my leaving or sacking makes things better, then I will do it without delay.
The 44-year-old former pace bowler is in his second spell as Pakistan coach, having first held the job between March 2000 and August 2011. Now, with the Olympic Games just 5 months away, a court in Rio de Janeiro has blocked funding from state lender Caixa Econômica Federal to the Quiros Galvão Consortium, building the Olympic Deodoro complex where 11 sports events will be held in August. Sources report that the suspended funds totaled 128.5 million reais. That's around $35 million. Prosecutors in Rio claim to have found evidence of fraud in earth-moving services at the complex based on documents that they've seen. Deodoro is the second largest cluster of Olympic venues. The Rio Prosecutor's Office, the Regional Court, the Rio Mayor's Office and Caixa would not confirm the blocked funds. Of 9 arenas in the complex, 7 are completed. Of the 2 left to be completed, only the shooting arena comes under the responsibility of the Quiros Galvão Construction Company, suspected of fraud. And that's where we leave it with the sports. So we take a short break. When we come back, Kevin Jansen, we've got more news and analysis. Stay tuned.
Pay or renew your TV license at one of the 10,000 outlets nationwide, and you could win weekly prizes. Congratulations to these 10 TV licenses competition winners. Remember, you are still in line to win the grand prize of 50,000 Rand. Pay yours and stand a chance to win.
A very good afternoon. You're watching the Midday Report.
Lunchtime news amplified.
But for now, this is what they call home. Their hope to shift to a higher ground seems to be against the tide.
Midday Report provides you with more than just news stories.
I just want Port Elizabeth to know that they own a world-class theatre.
Good afternoon. You're with the news at 1 in the headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. This is News Live. I'm Natasha Thorpe. Let's take a quick look at what's coming up in your headlines.
Good afternoon and welcome to A View from the House.
For all things news, tune in to Midday Report weekdays at 12 noon, only on the SABC News channel.
Welcome back. Now, Transnet plans to launch a first African-designed and manufactured locomotive this year. Transnet Engineering CEO Thamsanqa Giani says the company is currently doing the final tests on this locomotive. The company will make history later this year with the launch of the first African-designed locomotive. Recently, Transnet helped to reinstate the Botswana passenger rail by supplying 22 passenger coaches to Botswana. The deliveries is part of a 280 million rand contract to build and supply 37 new coaches to the neighbouring country. Transnet is helping Botswana to bring back its long-awaited passenger train service. The service was discontinued in 1999 due to safety concerns. The train will do a 500-kilometre one-way trip between Lobatse and Francistown daily. Transnet has set an ambitious goal to put many more Africans on the first African-manufactured and designed train. Wonderful pictures. Now I'm joined in studio by the Transnet Engineering CEO, Mr. Giani himself. Very good morning to you, Mr. Giani. Thanks for joining us here in Newsroom.
Good morning to you, Aben, and the viewers out there.
Just give us a little idea about this cooperation process between yourselves and Botswana Rail.
We've been working with Botswana Railways for a while. We obviously respond to tenders and we compete with entities from all over the world. And we've been lucky in that a few big ones we've backed in the last 3 or 4 years.
What are the goals with this Botswana initiative for Transnet? Is it the first of an expansion program that you're looking to maybe take continent-wide?
Transnet Engineering is an entity which is a division of Transnet that mainly manufactures rolling stock. We've been, over the last 20 years and more, manufacturing mainly wagons and doing maintenance and refurbishments on locomotives. In the last 3 years or so, we decided that with the capacity and the capabilities we have in Transnet Engineering, we need to use that wiser. We've been working in the last 10 years or so with PRASA as well, refurbishing most of their coaches. And we've built on that in that we started working on our own intellectual property to be able to design, engineer, and get to a point where we can manufacture our own coaches, as you could see with the ones we've manufactured for the people of Botswana. They had advertised the tender somewhere last year. I think it must have been around May, June, somewhere there. We responded to that tender and we were successful. We got awarded towards the end of July last year. We won and we are competing with many international entities.
Yeah.
We started the design review process with Botswana technical teams, which were finalized somewhere in October. So we built this train in about 4 months.
That is amazing.
And it's a state-of-the-art train.
Yeah, you can see it. It looks like a state-of-the-art train. What does it mean then? There we see the Botswana president, of course. But what does it mean for South Africa and wider Africa to have a coach that's designed and manufactured locally?
I mean, the sky is the limit for transit engineering and the rest of the continent, in that we have something that we can truly and proudly say is African, designed by Africans for the benefit and use of Africans. We've been in the last 3 years engaged in various marketing activities to take transit engineering to the rest of the continent. We are manufacturing wagons, various types of wagons, and we are manufacturing coaches.
Yeah.
We'll talk later about the locomotive that we'll be launching in the next 2 months. But in terms of the coaches, we are going to be aggressively engaging our other partners in the continent with a view to give them this technology to use. And we're also doing another launch in next week. We've been manufacturing wagons for the people of Swaziland.
Jobs, direct jobs, manufacturing locally. What are you foreseeing?
Look, as I say, the sky is the limit. We are at our initial stages because, as I say, this is the first of its kind. It's the first time we design, engineer, and manufacture coaches. We've had the designs for some years. And it's been the first time we put them into production. And coincidentally, we were making this train initially for ourselves. And when the order from Botswana came, we then decided that we'll give it to them and continue to make our own, which we'll use to showcase to customers who would want to see the products we make.
Do you see your locomotive as a key component in boosting trade across sub-Saharan Africa and the rest of the continent, for that matter?
Yes, of course. It's a locomotive that we've designed for the African continent. At the moment, the locomotive that we have designed is what we refer to as a branch line and yards locomotive. It's a locomotive that mainly gets used as a shunting locomotive. Yeah. We are in the future going to invest more in research and development, in developing something that is similar to what is being produced internationally in terms of heavy haul.
Is this sort of closing the book? Because historically the railways on the continent were seen to be a direct aid to the process of colonization. And even in South Africa, we could see that apartheid lent heavily on the railways. Is this part of overturning that legacy?
Yes, it is. The railways is the most efficient and cost-effective mode of transportation, whether you're looking at transportation of goods or you're looking at transportation of people.
Well, Mr. Jani, thank you for joining us today. It's certainly a very beautiful looking locomotive, and let's hope that we see it operating all over the African continent over the next decade.
Yes, but the one that you see are the coaches.
Yes.
It's passenger coaches, and we hope that the SABC will grace us with their presence when we launch our truly first of its kind African locomotive.
All it takes is an invitation and we're there, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us today. Now, Easter weekend has just passed, and the good news is that road fatalities have dropped by just under 50% this year. The Department of Transport and its agencies released these statistics in Pretoria yesterday. Now, a little bit earlier, we were joined by the Deputy Minister in the Transport Portfolio, Sindisiwe Chikunga.
This time around, we had a long weekend preceding the Easter weekend.
Yes.
We had schools closing, and we had holidays makers taking leaves because of the very fact that it was a weekend preceding the Easter weekend. And therefore, we only had 3 days for people to go to work, and many of them signed leaves. But we also have quite a number of other events in the country, like your Two Oceans Marathon, some festivities in Oostdorp and even in Soweto, KZN and all. And that therefore said, we're not just facing challenges that we normally face during Easters, but we are also facing other issues as well.
Indeed, indeed.
Yes.
But it is, you know, we look at these figures, and when you look at them, automatically you say, wow, I mean, this is fantastic. A 46% decrease, 287 fatalities last year compared to this year, 156. But I suppose we need to put it into a bigger perspective. People are still on holidays. So many people are still going to be coming back from their holidays. A lot of people, sort of schools are off. They're not going back to work as yet. People had left earlier. So when we talk about the difficulties, there's also, I suppose, something we need to read between the lines there. Will there be more analysis of road deaths following the end of school holidays?
Yes, we do. These are not the very last figures that we release. But of course, they will always preempt what is going to happen at the end of everything.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, last year we're talking about 287. And ultimately, we then had 333. But it will always preempt what is going to happen. And therefore, for now, these are not the final figures, as we indicated yesterday, and the minister indicated yesterday. However, we really do have a story to celebrate as a country, good as we have a story to mourn about, because 156 lives lost is still a lot. However, we could have simply lost 287 again, or increased the figure. Remember, in 2014, it was 200 something, and the following year we increased the figures. So it's easy to go up during the time when everybody is on the road driving long distances, as it is a feature in South Africa.
Yeah.
And therefore, translating these figures, we saved 131 lives. People who could actually be dead.
Yeah, 100%.
We saved them, and that's something to celebrate.
Yeah.
But of course, like I'm saying, equally mourn the death of 156 people.
And indeed, and we look at that, but you know, statistics aside, and we will put the statistics aside, because I mean, you open the papers today and there's just so much talk about, yes, but remember it also wasn't a month end, and if people had more money, they may have been misbehaving even more, which scares me. It scares the living daylights out of me. How can people misbehave more when we're looking at the fact that 913 drivers alone were arrested for drunken driving? That scares me. I mean, that is still the... People on our roads do not listen. I don't know what the problem is. What do you think it is?
The problem of abuse of alcohol is a problem in South Africa. It's an issue, and it is a problem.
Yeah.
Whether you speak crime, you speak road fatalities, social problems, that is a problem. The abuse of alcohol. And for us, it is translated into these numbers that we're talking about, 913 arrested. And many of these fatalities are, of course, attributed to abuse of alcohol and drunken driving as one of the causes. And that is why I think it's a campaign that calls on all of us as South Africans to take and run with, to say we cannot continue to abuse alcohol for anything, including road crashes.
And speeding. I mean, that's another issue. We've got 502 drivers caught for speeding. And, I mean, listen to this, viewers. The highest speed recorded was in KZN, 227 kilometers an hour. That's what one of our motorists was going. I read another story about a Gauteng resident who was taking his son or his child for a ride in his brand new BMW M5 and was caught speeding at some ridiculous speed. What was it? I don't even know, 182 kilometers an hour. I mean, speed is also, it's a big problem.
It is. And in fact, that is why we say to people, if you want to race, go to Kialkalam. We'll not arrest you there. But when you go to our road, the speed limit in South Africa, the highest is 120 kilometers per hour on national roads, for that matter. But of course, even then, you look at the prevailing circumstances, because it doesn't help to say the speed limit is 120 kilometers and therefore will drive at that speed, even if the weather, for instance, is demanding you to drive at 80 kilometers per hour.
Yeah.
And we take all these things into account.
Yeah.
And it is people that are obeying the rules of the road that are making us proud as a country. But of course, making us leave. I was just listening to you outside, Lena, when you're talking about the Ebola, saying about 11,000 people were killed. And you're talking about a number of countries in Western Africa. In South Africa, 14,000 are killed.
That interview took place a little bit earlier on our sister show, Morning Live. Now, in February, young jewellery designer, South African jewellery designer Belinda Pofu brought her second instalment of her Artist Currency event in collaboration with The Hive. The theme, which was breast cancer awareness, aimed at promoting awareness of the disease amongst young black people. The 22-year-old Belinda Pofu began making jewellery only in 2012. And what began as just a hobby is now a flourishing business called Sick, which is derived from the slang word sick, that of course means cool.
Started Artist Currency was mainly because I noticed that young people were not really collaborating with each other, and also that there were not enough platforms for young up-and-coming creatives like myself to showcase their work. So I decided to create the platform, which I called Artist Currency. And for the second installment, the inspiration behind the whole breast cancer awareness thing came from a personal story of mine, where when I was 19, I discovered a lump in my breast. It turned out to be nothing cancerous, but the shock really just scared me, and I really wanted to get involved in promoting breast cancer awareness. So I decided, why not just be creative about it and use art to actually promote awareness around the disease. After all, art is something that young people can relate to. It's something that we like, and yeah.
And art is really very cool now. It's like everywhere around the world, in the inner cities, there are platforms for artists and so forth. But tell me a little bit about your work here. We see some pictures on screen with some of the rings and some of the bracelets and neck pieces and the like that you're doing. What is this on screen now? It used to be a measuring tape when I was a young man.
Yes, that's measuring tape. Yeah, so I usually just take things that I find off the floor or pieces that people wouldn't necessarily make jewelry out of. Like the ring that I'm wearing right now, I made off pegs. Yeah. So I broke pegs together, and then I just sort of connected the... Yeah, so it's just my style of just using objects that people wouldn't necessarily use to make jewelry. That's the piece that you just saw over there. Just tell us about some of the pieces you've got in front of us, and what do you think about, what are you thinking when you're doing these kinds of things? This for you, it's a neck piece, goes around your neck. Yes. But it's a sort of safety pin, isn't it? Yes, it's a safety pin. People always ask me where my inspiration comes from. I find it very, extremely difficult to explain. I'll see things and ideas just come. I don't sit down and sketch or brainstorm. Yes, I just see things. You freestyle from A to Z. That's fantastic to see. Now, the inspiration behind all of this is to expose young black people to breast cancer awareness. Do you feel that amongst the young black people there's enough there's enough conversation around these kinds of diseases that really affect people? No, I don't. And I remember after my exhibition, one of the things that I noticed was that there were not enough females who attended, which is perfectly understandable because it's not a common discussion amongst us. When I'm hanging out with my friends, we don't talk about stuff like this. And what I'm trying to do is create awareness around the disease so that it becomes a everyday kind of conversation that we have, because it's important. Yeah, it's important. Your collaboration with The Hive, the outcomes, and what do you see Artist Currency in this relationship with The Hive? The Hive has been great. The platform that they have given me with regards to growing as an entrepreneur has been really, really great. I'm really, really grateful for it as well. And JMB has also been very, very supportive. So with regards to my collaboration with them, what they do is they give young people like myself a chance to actually grow our business, and they give us funding, and they give us all the other resources that we need to actually grow our brands and grow our businesses. So I definitely see a good future with The Hive and with JMB. Yeah, what they've been doing is amazing. I wouldn't have been able to actually hold Artist Currency if it were not for them. So, it's nice to have sponsors. It means you've arrived. Let me tell you, let's talk about you personally before we wrap it up. Talk about you. You started this whole thing because you couldn't really see yourself going to study because of financial implications and so forth. We see what's happening on campuses around the country right now in South Africa. How does that make you feel, and also looking back at your journey? It saddens me It really does, because I can relate to it 120%. But one of the things that I would encourage young students who are having financial difficulties is to embrace each and every single part of their journey. It sounds really corny, but I know with me, if I hadn't taken those gap years, then I probably would not be where I am today, because I would have gone to school and I wanted to go into costume and wardrobe design, so I would have probably been doing that right now, so I wouldn't be where I am. So embrace each and every single part of your journey. Some things don't necessarily make sense when they are happening. You just have to hold on to the fact that this is part of your journey and everything always works out for the better. So positive thoughts, positive thoughts, positive thoughts.
Interesting young lady. I did that interview with her yesterday, but because of our live broadcast, we simply couldn't show it to you yesterday. I thought we'd look back at it today. Anyhow, let's take a look at what's happening on our Facebook page. In South Africa, of course, a group of 29 Cape Town University students who stormed the gates of Parliament last year. They're expected in the Magistrates Court in Cape Town today. Then in Nigeria, the President, Muhammadu Buhari, will not sign the 2016 budget bill passed by Parliament last week unless lawmakers provide more details of the legislation, he says. Then also a new United Nations report has found there to be insufficient transparency and accountability measures in the functioning of the Office of the President, the General Assembly, making sweeping recommendations that member states will have to approve. Interesting that. All more details and more stories, just like our Facebook page. Newsroom is what it's called, and you'll get updates periodically in your feed. Now, let's take a quick look at the front pages from around the African continent. We'll start in Namibia. The Namibian reports that Ongwediva Medipark has rewritten Namibia's medical history after his first ever successful kidney transplant, making it the first private hospital in the country to carry out such an operation. Then, in Zambia, the Post says health workers in Zambia are frustrated because of the poor leadership and high cost of living, says former Health Deputy Minister Luipa Puma. Then finally in Swaziland, the Observer reports that about 22,000 Swazis are set to benefit from the 10 million Babalali Red Cross Mobile Money Initiative, which is set to kickstart in the next couple of weeks in the fight against the drought in that country. Time now for us to take another look at the weather with Phil Hawkins.
And I'm Prabhakshini Chetty Miller, SAB Miller, Anheuser-Busch InBev. It's something that I need to learn to say more often.
Will together produce around a third of the world's beer.
It is a mouthful.
Have you ever considered skin bleaching? Nigeria tops the list of African countries with 77% of its women bleaching their skin.
Now I can see that it is not good because it affects my face and some of my body parts.
Thousands of Arab Israelis and Palestinians participated in a big rally.
Flight MH17 was shot down by a Russian-made missile.
How those chips may fall is a prediction best left to the currency of time.
That's Primetime News, Africa Journal, and your world on SABC News.
Trends follows fashion designers, cultural and lifestyle issues when and as they happen.
I'm always excited to see what the new fresh talent is bringing along. I'm always excited to see the direction that the designers are going in.
We celebrate the brilliant works of playwright in Mpumalanga.
When everybody else talk about their own challenges, some talk about maybe the whaling that happens around Japan and other areas, I can be able to say, look, we have been confronted with the problem whereby our rhino population is going down.
We never miss previews of movies locally and abroad just to keep you informed.
So I'm a partner.
Welcome to the big boys.
Join Refulo Mula for that 1 hour weekly dose of arts and entertainment news every Friday at 9 p.m. on Trends.
How does this extreme heat affect basic conditions of living?
Food spoils more readily, and the risk of food poisoning outbreaks or food poisoning in a household.
Should we experience another heat wave soon, and it's coming?
First sign is always thirst. Thirst is a sign that already your body started to be dehydrated, and that's a very early sign that most people will be able to sort of pay attention to and then act on. That doesn't warrant any serious medical attention. But the minute that you start to feel slightly nauseous, that you start to feel dizzy, that's a sign that you need to stop what you're doing, get out of the sun, get into a cool area, slow down your intensity, get hydrated, cool down.
Join Dr. Sello Mutawung every Saturday from 9 till 10 in the morning.
It's 1100 hours Central Africa time on this Wednesday, the 30th of March, 2016. This is Newsroom on SABC News, Channel 404, Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock. As you know, we're also streaming live on YouTube, with the entire show now available on our YouTube channel. Question that we pose to you is, what do you think South Africa can learn from Zimbabwe's land reform program, if any? Let me know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on our Facebook page. But first, let's take a look at your news headlines. Scores of foreign nationals have fled Katlehong and Gauteng sees rand in overnight looting and violence. All charges have been withdrawn in the Western Cape High Court against a group of 29 University of Cape Town students. And the World Health Organization says West Africa's Ebola outbreak no longer constitutes a threat to international public health. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning to you.
Elvis, good morning. It's been quite a disappointing few days for South African sports fans, what with the Proteas being dumped out of the World Cup and Bafana as well, seemingly losing their way for AFCON qualification. I get ahead of myself. Good morning. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
It's by luck. If we would definitely, it's going to be tough. We won't make it, I doubt.
Bafana's hopes of qualifying for AFCON 2017 fade away as they draw 0-0 with Cameroon in Durban.
Look, I'm just a guy that's going to work hard with these players. That's the bottom line. I know the players support me. I've got very good relationships with the players. I work ethic and management.
The Proteas are back in country with tough questions to answer.
It's a big, exciting match, but our feet are firmly on the ground and we're going to be wanting to perform our plans as best we can again.
New Zealand, the only unbeaten team at the World Cup so far, are taking nothing for granted ahead of the semi-final against England today. That's what we've got for you in about 30 minutes or so. Be sure to stick around for that. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Kendall will be back later, but right now, our top story this morning. Scores of foreign nationals have fled Katlehong on Gauteng's East Rand in overnight looting and violence. Locals clash with foreign shop owners who try to reopen their businesses. Now, they've been barred from the area since earlier this month after a Pakistani shop owner allegedly shot and killed a local and injured 4 others. Police continue to monitor the area this morning. Our reporter Griselda Lewis and cameraman Herbert Mamela were in Katlehong last night.
Running battles, Ekurhuleni Metro Police had their hands full. Again, stripped of their livelihood, foreign nationals salvaging what remains of yet another looting spree.
Well, this is all that remains from hours of overnight looting. Many foreign nationals have fled this area to the local police station. They say remaining in the township would be a risk to their lives.
At the police station, the devastation palpable.
Big problem, Baba.
But the refuge they sought here was short-lived.
It's problematic. People are not yet relaxed. They are still at anger. You try to go in now, you will be killed. Your life is in risk. Your life is in risk, and already some of your guys, they were assaulted, stabbed, shops looted.
We are not just living here. We don't want to put our lives in risk. We're scared, very scared. So I have to stay in police station, otherwise no way.
I don't have safe place to stay and to sleep also.
Back in the township, the affected shops being closed off, while others are already counting the losses.
Because so by
Nosive Machukulana leases her garage to a foreign national for business. Now it's all gone. More police reinforcements were brought in overnight. Griselda Lewis, SABC News, Katlehong on the East Rand.
Meanwhile, Gauteng police spokesperson Otolo Kweza has dismissed reports that a person has died during the overnight looting and violence in Katlehong last night. She says the situation is calm and police continue to monitor the situation.
We don't have reports of a person being stabbed, nor shot, nor killed. At the moment, the situation in Katlehong is calm, and the police members are patrolling the area and monitoring. There was a meeting yesterday where amongst the locals, some of the locals wanting the foreign nationals to come back in the area. Some of them did not want them to come back in the area. They threatened to loot the shops. However, the nationals that want the foreign nationals to come back assisted the police in stopping the attempt to loot. And as a result, the situation was brought into calm. At the moment, no arrest yet, but we are investigating a case of public violence.
News just in. All charges have been withdrawn in the Western Cape High Court against the group of 29 University of Cape Town students who stormed the gates of Parliament last year. The sons of struggle hero Frank Chikane, UCT Vice-Chancellor Max Price, Anglican Archbishop Thabo Makgoba and Advocate Wim Trenggrove are among them. The group also included the student activist Jumani Maxwele, who initiated the Rhodes Must Fall campaign that led to the eventual removal of the Cecil John Rhodes statue from UCT last year. The group faced charges of public violence and attending an illegal gathering. In October last year, the students clashed with riot police when they marched on Parliament as part of the nationwide #FeesMustFall campaign. Meanwhile, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa says the Buy Local Summit is very important as it brings together key role players in the business sector and it will help grow the local economy. SABC News spoke to Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa and asked him how significant the summit is for emerging and small business.
It's a platform
that brings together a number of key role players in the business sector, but more importantly, to get them to focus on how we can help to grow our economy and create jobs through buying locally made goods. So here we want to promote the notion and the idea and raise the level of consciousness of South Africans that they should buy local. There are many, many businesses that are creating goods here in South Africa. We need to support them and help them to use that as a springboard to be able to showcase their goods internationally. So this has two purposes: for local proliferation of goods that are made here, as well as for showcasing goods that are made in South Africa for the export market.
Now, Deputy President, the issue of skills development, do we have the necessary skills to compete with the developed countries and the developing markets as well?
Skills is a challenge for us here in South Africa, largely because of our past, because the past misrulers of our country ensured that the majority of our people do not get skills that are well tuned or attuned to modern economies where they can make really good goods and provide good services. But the government has started a process, and it is deepening the process of skilling South Africans. Yesterday we were at another summit, which is the Human Resource Development Council Summit, where we were talking about skills and proliferating skills, and that is why we are focusing on establishing colleges where artisans will be trained and where many other professionals will also be trained. So we are reskilling our country and making sure that we have a skill base that can produce goods that will compete well in the modern economy.
Now, Proudly South Africa, I see the CEO is here once again. We spoke to him earlier on now. They're saying that government, as well as the private sector, including ordinary people as consumers, they should buy locally produced products. Is government doing that?
Well, government is doing that in the main. Government is the biggest procurer of goods and services in our economy. So they are doing that in the main, but we want to refocus more and more on ensuring that we buy locally made goods. And we want to raise the level of consciousness of everyone, of the private sector, as well as of government and various other institutions. It is only when we raise that level of consciousness that people become more and more aware that we should be proudly South African and buy goods that are made here, that we will be able to inject life and growth into our economy as well. So government is at the forefront of this and will continue to be at the forefront of this.
News from further afield on the continent. The World Health Organization says that West Africa's Ebola outbreak no longer constitutes a threat to international public health. Now, it's declared an end to a nearly 20-month outbreak that killed around 11,300 people.
In terms of the original transmission chains, these have all stopped now. The original transmission chains that were ongoing at the time the FIC was declared and subsequent to that, these have been stopped, meaning the countries have met the criteria of a 42-day observation period after the last case twice tested negative, and then an additional enhanced surveillance period of a further 90 days. The most recent country to achieve that, of course, was Guinea, that passed that 90-day extended surveillance period on the 27th of March. What's happening right now in Guinea is a new cluster or little outbreak related to a reintroduction from the survivor population. So this in some ways is distinct and is one of the ongoing risks that have to be managed as the outbreak is brought to its complete conclusion.
The Cape Law Society says it has begun a transformative program because they say the number of black law practitioners does not reflect the demographics of the country. A debate on the issue was held in Cape Town last night.
The law fraternity, tasked with interpreting and applying the law in the name of the state. Society looks to the judiciary to provide a mechanism for the resolution of disputes in communities. But this law community has a number of its own issues. These problems were raised in a robust debate last night.
The Cape Law Society recognizes that it is one of the challenges that we face in order to ensure that there are more black practitioners who are able to dispense access to justice to the poor.
But it seems that the issues within the law profession run much deeper.
When I was a law student, we studied the law of property without ever facing the platform on which property relations were constructed in South Africa, which was the dispossession of black people, the dispossession of their land, and the creation of wealth on the basis of cheap black labor. We studied criminal law without ever discussing crime in South Africa and how police resources are disproportionately allocated to wealthy, mostly white communities.
The Cape Law Society hopes the transformative program will bring about change within the profession in order to transform the law and make it more accessible to all. Nomaoto Solwandle, SABC News, Cape Town.
Transport Minister Dipuo Peters says the number of crashes caused by fatigue, reckless and drunk driving is still a major concern. Now this despite the 46% decrease in road fatalities over the Easter weekend. The minister announced yesterday that there were 156 fatalities this year compared to 287 for the same period last year. She attributed the sharp decline to visible policing and an increase in road safety campaigns. Nearly 1,000 motorists were locked up for drunk driving over Easter. The Constitutional Court is set to hand down judgment in the Nkandla matter tomorrow. The highest court in the land has to rule whether President Jacob Zuma has to comply with the Public Protector's recommendations that he should pay for some of the upgrades at his Nkandla residence in KwaZulu-Natal. The Economic Freedom Fighters and the Democratic Alliance brought an application to court earlier this year. The DA says they believe the judgment will be a defining moment for the country. Now that's your news for now.
News Today takes an in-depth look on news locally, continentally, and globally. We bring the world to your home. We cover all economy news extensively to keep you informed. We are live to break news as and when they happen across the world. We analyze news using experts in all aspects. Make a date with News Today every Monday to Friday from 3 to 5:30 p.m.
We're heading to a future of cars that will drive themselves and a place where robots will be doing some of our chores. But the challenge in Africa is to make sure that everyone is part of this new world.
To be behind with technology, it is a challenge for us as offenders.
There are many initiatives to ensure that Africans are truly connected.
We're now giving more access and internet to now the end users.
On Network, we have information on Africa's technology landscape, possibilities for the future, and some great African innovations. That's Network with me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, Transport Minister Dipuo Peters says the number of crashes caused by fatigue, reckless and drunk driving remains a major concern. This despite the 46% decrease in road fatalities over the past Easter weekend.
The Minister announced yesterday that there were 156 fatalities this year nationwide compared to 287 for the same period last year. She attributed the sharp decline to visible policing and an increase in road safety campaigns. Nearly 1,000 motorists were also locked up for drunk driving over this past holiday. The two major routes that carried most of the traffic, of course, the N1 to Limpopo and then the N3 towards Durban. Now, from our Polokwane studios, we have the spokesperson for the Department of Transport, Kagiso Mutani. A very good morning to you and thank you very much for joining us today.
Good morning, and I greet all our viewers.
Just give us a quick overview. How do you view the last holiday period in the province? Are you happy with the numbers despite a few big accidents that we've seen?
As a Department of Transport, we are really happy and appreciate the commitment of our traffic officers for their commitment of working 24/7. And we also like to thank the motorists who behaved throughout Easter holidays. Remember, when we checked the stats comparison, we were at 49 2015, but this year it was 19. Unfortunately, we lost 8 people on Monday, where it increased the fatalities to 25, but it's still low. We just say to our motorists, thank you very much for your cooperation, and thank you to our traffic officers. If all of us, we can be law enforcers on our road, according to the National Road Traffic Act of 93 of 1996, all of us will arrive safely to our destination.
Are you seeing an improvement in the behavior of motorists on the roads, especially in your province?
Yes, we saw a lot of improvement, but I think we just like to thank a special unit that was formulated by our department. We are having a task team that is focusing on moving violation, drunk driving, and reckless and negligent. Throughout this weekend, we have arrested more than 200 drivers for driving under the influence of alcohol. We have impounded more than 30 minibuses, especially public transport buses and minibuses for unroadworthiness and being overloaded. Remember, when a public transport is overloaded, it's one of the major causes of fatal accidents on our road.
Now this year, Limpopo officially hosted and launched the National Easter Road Safety Campaign. What influence did you see this have on your operations during the Easter period?
It had a lot of impact. Our MEC was the one who was inaugurated to act on behalf of our national minister, and we realized that the community came at large and they took the message of road safety by heart, because we even received calls from the other motorists, from the passengers, when they were in a public transport and the driver is driving recklessly. We managed to arrest a minibus on N1 South around Mokopane, and we arrested another driver on N1 South at Manzole due to the help of the member of the public. We say keep it up. If all of us, we can be law enforcers on our road, report bad driving, we'll see that we will have a reduction of fatal accidents on our road.
Now, you mentioned drink driving a little bit earlier, and the World Health Organization, it says that South Africa, the worst drink driving place in the world. How do we overcome this? What's the message to the people?
The message to our motorists is that they must know that you must not ignore the sign. Immediately you feel that you are drunk, you are drunk. Let's make sure that when you go to the parties, to the beaches, to the everything, we take someone who is not drinking to be our driver, because once you are drunk, you lose visual while driving. And the other aspect is our people, we don't go for health screening. Last year we had an operation with Department of Health jointly, so on the 31st, we realized that we checked and screened 35 drivers of minibuses. Amongst them, we found that 18 of them, they were sick, they were having high blood and sugar diabetic, and it's one of the possible cause of accidents on our road. Remember, when you are having a high blood, you can have a stroke while driving. Sugar diabetic, you can become blind while driving. That is why sometimes when we arrive at the scene of the accident, we fail to construct what is exactly happened, what is the possible cause of that accident. Let's go for health screening, refrain from driving under the influence of alcohol, and be patient with each other on the road.
Thank you very much for joining us, spokesperson for the Department of Transport in the Limpopo province. They've had a very successful blitz there over the Easter weekend. Big reduction, of course. Yesterday, Minister of Transport, Dipuo Peters, released the preliminary 2016 Easter road crash and fatality statistics during a media briefing at the Road Traffic Management Corporation head office in Pretoria. 47% down, they say. Let's have a look at what you think about this on social media, of course, today. Ronald Peary says Northwest recorded the highest decrease of 71%, with the number of fatalities reduced from 28 to just 8. Talking about the Easter stats. Mansa Musa says the saddest part of today was Easter road death stats. Easter stats makes me very sad and angry, says Mansa Musa. Olive on Wine says if the Easter stats are true, the only reason fewer people died is because fewer people can afford to travel, not because of good governance. Really, Ollie? You kidding me? The Hebrew says Easter stats. I mean, when are we going to have 0 fatalities? We will have 0 fatalities when we all obey the law and drive within the speed limits and don't drink and drive and listen, well, and be courteous on the road, generally speaking. But it's coming down, the numbers. That's the good news. Now, we move on to the Eastern Cape. National Wool Week kicks off in Port Elizabeth today, focusing on agriculture, retail, fashion and design in order for the public to have a better understanding of the wool industry. Now, since the year 2000, the rand value of merino wool has increased by over 600%. The wool industry in South Africa is at the start of a positive growth stage with a stepping up of wool production nationwide. Now, let's go to Janine Lee, who's attending Wool Week. Very good morning to you, Janine. Nice to have you with us as always.
Thank you so much, Evan, and welcome to the Eastern Cape, to Nelson Mandela Bay, where we are hosting National Wool Week. It's exciting for the city, and as you said, it's merging agriculture, fashion and design. And when most of us think of wool, we think of bales of wool, we think of sheep, we think of farms. We never quite put the fashion aspect onto it. And just before I came here, I was across the road where there is a big exhibition, what fashion is about and what you can actually get from wool. And I was looking at wedding dresses, I was looking at shoes, all made out of wool. And we don't always make this connection when we think about wool. Yo, can you hear that guy? He's noisy. I really think he wants to be on TV. Maybe we'll get to him later. But first, Evan, let's have a chat. I know we spoke to him a week or two ago, just before National Wool Week. Cape Wool's CEO, Louis de Beer. Louis, wow, so National Wool Week is upon us. Your aim with Wool Week, what kind of things are you trying to merge? I know it's not just about sheep and farms.
No, it's not just about sheep and farms. You know, we have to try to explain to the public what the contents of their garments are that they actually buy. We'd like to educate them on wool sheep farming, on the wool industry, but most of all on the actual fabric and the origin of what they wear.
Louis, if we look at South African sheep, predominantly what breed of sheep is South Africa notorious for?
For merino sheep, and very good breed to use for apparel wool. Yeah.
And our wool is held in quite high esteem. What is the reason for this?
Well, I think firstly, the merino breed has been refined within South Africa, and we have very good genetics in South Africa. Secondly, our classing is of a particularly high standard. And then, of course, there's no mulesing that happens in South Africa.
When you talk about classing, for our viewer, just explain basically what it is.
The long and the short is, once you've shorn a sheep, you throw the fleece, and the fleece has to be sorted in different categories of class. And it's basically just sorting it into uniform classes.
If we look at world production, what does South Africa contribute?
Well, in the apparel segment, we contribute about 18% of world production. We do 50 million kilograms a year at this stage of the game, and hopefully 75 million in future.
Louis, I believe some issues in Australia which is favourable for South Africa. Can you talk us through that?
I think two things happen in Australia, or two things are happening in Australia at the moment. The one is the drought that they're experiencing. They've had a decline in production, and that's a little bit to our benefit because we can fill the market gap. And secondly, you have a move to dairy as well, which is also reducing production. So they have lost a bit of production, and we hope to fill that market gap.
You mentioned drought. South Africa's had some of its own. How does that affect the wool market?
Yeah, we have had a drought, and it does affect wool. It does affect the quality of wool. It's also an opportunity within the drought because it supports the farmers specifically with their cash flow. We are expecting the clip to be a little bit lighter this year, and we are expecting a ever so slight decline in quality. But so far we've been fairly consistent in our deliveries, and we're actually quite happy with our deliveries at the moment. Yeah.
Wool prices, the exchange rate, how's that looking?
Look, I mean, we're an export commodity, so the exchange rate depreciation just it's wonderful for us, especially for the local producers. Obviously, as a community, it's not a good thing, but we do benefit. And in dollar terms, the price of wool has been holding up nicely, and it's on the increase going forward. Yeah.
Now, National Wool Week here, Louis, there's a lot of stuff happening. For the viewer out there and people maybe in Nelson Mandela Bay who want to pop down, it's quite an interactive week, isn't it?
Look, we are actually combining a retail display with an agricultural component, with a product component as well. So there's a lot to see, there's a lot to do. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to come and have a look at a sheep being shorn. That's not something that people see very often. It's also a wonderful opportunity to come and look at Gijs and his dogs, which you hear in the background at the moment. Shepherding sheep, which is also something that you don't see very regularly. So it's quite a unique event. It's a first for us, and we'll enjoy the support from the PE community.
Now, just finally, I believe that men in the industry have the softest hands. Can you tell us why?
They do, actually. It's because they work with lanolin all the time. So I read a piece once that said that the only thing that the Australians had in common, the Australian shearers, they were from all walks of life, but they all had soft hands. And it's exactly the same in South Africa.
Louis, let's leave it on that. So now you know, you're looking for a man with soft hands, find a sheep farmer or a sheep shearer. But we're going to be crossing a little later also, Eben, just after 12 o'clock. I'm going to see if I can track down one of our world-class classes, and hopefully she'll be able to explain to us just how it works, that South African will... when you buy something of quality, you get a whole big bale full of quality. I'm sure you heard that sheep in the background. He was hell-bent on getting on air. We didn't see him, but you can hear him. But a lot's happening here in Nelson Mandela Bay, and a good week for Port Elizabeth, Evan.
I thought you were going to speak to the sheep, so rudely interrupted you there for a minute, Janine. But we're not going to make any sheep jokes. We're going to keep it above the belt today. Thank you for joining us, and all the best at Wool Week. We'll be back with you later in the day. Janine Lee always does the nicest stories. Wool Week. Fashion is a fashion event, they tell us. Wonderful. Anyhow, that wraps our regional slot here on Newsroom. This morning, 11:30, after a short break, Kendall Machamati is going to bring us an extended sports roundup to give us all the top sports stories around the world in the last 24 hours. Don't go away.
As stories are broken around the world, SABC makes sure you do not miss out. As the stories unfold throughout the day, News at 8 updates all newsworthy stories worldwide. Globally, we are there. Locally, we leave no story untold. Make a date with News at 8 every Saturday and Sunday on SABC News, Africa's news leader. Malema, when pregnant with her first daughter, Relebogile knew that she wanted her daughter not to experience any identity issues. This is when she decided to look for toys that resembled Black as Beautiful.
I think for me, it was also just to get our girls to have some sense of identity, somewhere, some sense of belonging.
I grew up having black and white dolls, and going to a multiracial school, I did not really see color. So for me, it's this thing of she should actually know what her true identity is.
Join your host, Buleng Mulebadze, on Bophelong every Friday at 17:30.
welcome back. I'm Kendall Makhamat and I've got your sports on Prime. Our top story for this particular sports bulletin is about football and Bafana Bafana. South Africa's chances of qualifying for the 2017 Gabon AFCON hang by a thread after Sheikh Mashaba's troops played to a goalless draw against Cameroon in Durban. The home side are currently in third place in the group with 3 points after 4 games, trading second-placed minnows Mauritania by 3 points. This is what the coach had to say.
We've done all what we could do. Most unfortunately, we threw it away in our first opening games. That is where we gave it away. I mean, with these draws, we should be just adding in winning the first 2 games. But unfortunately, I would still say the boys did very well. Unfortunately, it's still the problem of finishing up front.
Does this say that the road to Gabon has become even more tougher, if not ended at all?
I think it's by luck if we would definitely. Because if you look at the 2 teams on top of us, they're sitting up comfortably with 8 and 6, I think. I don't know what's the result today. So that alone suggests it's going to be tough. We won't make it, I think.
And when you look at that, the 2 teams having played to a draw, Gambia and Mauritania, 3 points here would have been very good at taking us back really into contention.
Actually, 6 points away in Cameroon. We had all the chances of winning that game. Coming back here again, we had all the chances of winning it. We only, like I said, we fluffed it. But I think the boys did very well. It was a good experience for them for the future.
That script sounds familiar. Now, in other 2017 Africa Cup of Nations qualifying matches, 2013 champions Nigeria have failed to qualify after falling to a 1-0 defeat in Egypt in their Group G match. The match in Alexandria became a virtual all-or-nothing tie for Nigeria. This after Chad withdrew from the group on Sunday. They cited financial difficulties, so all results from their matches were then erased. With just 1 game remaining and only the group winners to qualify, Nigeria cannot make up their 5-point deficit to table toppers Egypt. Ramadan Sobi's 65th minute winner puts Egypt on the verge of qualification. Egypt faced Tanzania in June and will book their place in Gabon with any result better than a 3-0 defeat. Now, South Africa's national cricket team, the Proteas, return home after yet another disappointing sojourn at an ICC event. The Proteas were dumped out of the competition after winning just 2 games in their group, which saw them once again being eliminated during the quarterfinals at a Cricket World Cup.
A sigh of relief as they head home to loved ones after facing an unforgiving media upon their arrival from the T20 World Cup. A handful of Proteas players landed at the OR Tambo International Airport, the number of fans that met them to welcome them home, perhaps a testament of their performance in India. Once again, nothing went right for a team boasting the best batsman and spinner in the world cricket.
But it's a tough one to put our finger on. We just didn't play the big moments well enough. You think of our games that we lost. The game against England, if someone said you've got 230 to beat England in the first game, you'd have signed up for that. So it's a tough one to put our finger on. It's really difficult to explain at the moment.
There's been a mixed bag of results from the team in recent time. Test series losses to India and England, followed by an ODI series victory against England, then a T20 series loss to Australia. So how does South Africa judge them as a collective?
Yeah, I would say to the fans that, I mean, we feel exactly the same, and the fans have got every right to feel like that. It's disappointment. When you've got a great team on paper like we do, you expect results. The T20 team has been a very successful one of late, but we didn't produce once again on an ICC tournament. The T20 World Cup is a tough one. You play your easy game is supposed to be Afghanistan, but they're just as good on those conditions. Yeah, and then when you speak about different formats, obviously our one-day cricket team has improved a lot. 2 years ago we were in a bit of a hole and we wanted to improve, and we've done that. And we rebuild that team, and the test team is in that stage now. So, yeah, I think from a public point of view, I understand what you're saying. You have to go write a similar article about similar things. But for now, this is just obviously about the T20 cricket.
For cricket-loving fans, it sounds a little too familiar as they hold their breath for the next Cricket World Cup in England and Wales in 3 years' time. Tabi Sositole, SABC News, Kempton Park.
Now, just like we did with Bafana Bafana and actually got Sheikh Mashaba's viewpoint from the horse's mouth, so to speak, here's more from the coach, Russell Domingo.
As far as I know, preparation, in my opinion, has been outstanding. Leading into the event, preparation spot on. Leading into the first game against England, we prepared as well as we prepared for any other game. And look, like I've said, the margins in this particular format, like we said before we left, are very small. The difference between getting into a semi-final or not, tiny. Ask India, they've got into a semi-final and they got out of jail against Bangladesh. Those are the margins that you face with at that particular level, particularly in events like that. There's always questions that's going to be asked after falling out of an event like that. As far as I can see, it looks a very happy team. It's just one of those things just haven't managed to go for us. We didn't play the big moments well. We probably batted badly against the West Indies when we should probably have got 140. I think we got 20 in our last 5 overs. We were thinking 135 is a winning score there, so those small things just didn't go for us. We just didn't play those big moments well enough. But as far as I can read it, it seems like a pretty happy team at the moment. Look, there's no doubt, particularly in the test format, results haven't been good at the last 2 series, but the public have got to understand that we played in India in really tough conditions. We probably didn't have the strike power that we wanted, with a few injuries, a few guys missing. Guys like Dale Vernon not playing any of that series. I suppose any of the series against England are big players to lose. And forget about the past players that have just recently retired, but to lose those 2 guys who are massively important in that format is a big loss. Look, I'm just a guy that's going to work hard with these players. That's the bottom line. I know the players support me. I've got very good relationships with the players. Our work ethic, our management team, outstanding bunch of cricket coaches. They get the best out of their players. Not all the time. There are always going to be coaches that lose games at World Cups, and there's only going to be one World Cup winner, and maybe that coach will also be faced with the same questions when he gets back home. But look, the management team that we've put together, in my opinion, is as good as any management team in the world. There's some outstanding individuals, guys who've built good relationship with players, with a lot of expertise, a lot of experience as players and as coaches. So I'm pretty confident that it's the right group of management to take the team forward.
Now, in the meantime, Pakistan head coach Waqar Younis has offered to resign. This after his team were knocked out of the World 2020 at the Super 10 stage, just like South Africa.
It is. Pakistan exited the tournament after winning just 1 of their 4 games in Group 2. The team, captained by Shahidi Afridi, beat Bangladesh but lost to New Zealand, Australia and arch-rivals India.
I placed my hands together and begged for forgiveness, literally from the nation, from all those who shouted slogans when we were exiting the airport, or those at NCA who take care of us. If they send me home, that is not an issue. I will go home. If my leaving or sacking makes things better, then I will do it without delay.
The 44-year-old former pace bowler is in his second spell as Pakistan coach, having first held the job between March 2000 and August 2011.
Now, of course, back to action at the T20 World Cup. New Zealand captain Ken Williamson is taking nothing for granted, even though his team cruised into the last 4 as the only unbeaten team in the tournament to book a clash with England, who seemed to be peaking at the right time. Williamson has displayed the tactical flexibility required to win a major tournament by sacrificing pace and gambling with 3 spinners, a ploy that paid off in the tournament opener against hosts India.
I know that going into tomorrow it's a big exciting match, but our feet are firmly on the ground and we're going to be wanting to perform our plans as best we can again. Yeah, I think we need to look at the conditions before we decide on our final side, but naturally you consider the track you're playing on, the ground size and also the opposition, and at this stage we're still yet to decide on an 11.
Can't quite believe where we are overall with our one-day cricket and our T20 cricket. I think the guys that we've selected have done outstandingly well. They've showed a great amount of attitude in learning. Yeah, quite a few actually. The main one would be how relaxed everybody is around the group, how much they're enjoying the challenge of playing international cricket at the moment, and I think their hunger to win. It's all right having fun and enjoying what you're doing, but if you don't have that inner drive to always want to improve and to win games of cricket, you'll stand still for a long time. But this side has showed strengths, which are similar to that 2010 team.
And a court in Rio de Janeiro has blocked funding from state lender Caixa Econômica Federal to the Queiroz Galvão consortium building the Olympic Deodoro complex, where 11 sports events will be held in August. Sources report that the suspended funds totaled 128.5 million reais. That's around $35 million. Prosecutors in Rio claim to have found evidence of fraud in earth-moving services at the complex based on documents that they've seen. Deodoro is the second largest cluster of Olympic venues. The Rio Prosecutor's Office, the Regional Court, Rio Mayor's Office and Caixa would not confirm the blocked funds. Of 9 arenas in the complex, 7 are completed. Of the 2 left to be completed, only the shooting arena comes under the responsibility of the Queiroz Galvão construction company suspected of fraud. And that's where we leave it with the sports. Up next, the weather forecast.
Yeah, thank you so much and a very good morning to you. Let's take a look at what's going on in terms of your weather. First of all, we start off with taking a look at a lot of cloud cover all the way throughout South Africa's southwestern areas there. We've already seen quite a bit of rainfall in the area. That's brought in by a lower pressure system, which of course is bringing in a front as well. Temperatures coming down as a result. Central Africa and Western Africa's southern coastline also seeing a lot of cloud cover in this region. We're seeing that now extending up towards Addis Ababa and the surrounding areas. In terms of your rainfall, what does this mean for today? Well, it means isolated showers throughout most of Central Africa here. We are going to see a stronger band of cloud cover as well as some stormy systems developing over the northern parts of Mozambique for today. As we move through today though and into tomorrow, what this all means for us is that we're going to see a slightly more clear one in the east, and the west remains very, very wet there. Now, in terms of your local temperatures here, Bloemfontein peaking at 31 degrees. Temperatures in Cape Town are at about 19. And we're seeing, as I said, cloud cover and rainfall already expected there as a result of that lower pressure system. Beautiful sunny skies in most of southern Africa for today. That begins to change as we move further north. Lilongwe's at 28 degrees and Lusaka shares the same high. Kilimanjaro peaks at 35 with isolated showers there. Those showers don't quite make it towards the northern regions around Juba and Khartoum. Both of these areas sharing a 38-degree maximum now. What you can expect in these regions is a little bit of cloud cover there. Addis Ababa, very, very small chance of rainfall for today with some low-level and mid-level cloud cover forecast as well. Riyadh's at 28 degrees, Dubai 34, and the sun is shining. As you can see, Damascus and Tehran still struggling to get a little bit warmer. They're 19 and 15 degree maximums, despite a fair amount of cloud cover, a mild 24 degree high for Cairo. Take a look at West Africa's northern regions though. This is where we're going to see a massive temperature difference. These areas are much warmer than we've seen over the past few months, so change of season definitely has arrived. 27 in Marrakesh, 32 in Algiers, as well as Tunis. Definitely much, much warmer than we're used to. Now what we're seeing is isolated showers developing through Monrovia towards Abidjan. They don't quite make it to Lagos yet today, but we are going to see some dense cloud cover over the area. Rainfall possibly to follow into tomorrow. What we're also going to see is sunny skies over Niamey, 44 degree maximums there, so temperatures soaring all the way into the mid-40s. 36 degree highs for Bangui, and dense cloud cover means it is going to be a bit of a rainy one around the western parts of Central Africa here. Brazzaville in the Congo, 31 degree maximums. Now, this is where you can contact us with your feedback or queries, weather at sabc.co.za. That is our email address. Alternatively, give us a call, 011 714 5077. That's where I leave your weather for now. Do stay tuned.
Now, Kendall, a truly terrible week and weekend for South Africans on the sports front. I mean, Bafana, highly unlikely that we'll qualify.
Well, you know what, Elvis, it's only terrible insofar as it's a repeat of the same for Bafana. Terrible for the Proteas because we really were expecting them to bring it back, like that song of theirs, that Fireball version of theirs. But Bafana, you know what, it's been done before where they actually are exactly where they are, depending on other people's performances to see if they qualify for the next round.
And that is simply not good enough.
Absolutely not.
Let's take a look at some of the comments. Remember that we also ask you a question today. What do you think we can learn from Zimbabwe's land reform? I want to see if there's maybe some comments there. But let's see some of the comments that has come through throughout the entire show and see what we got here for you on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. Here's on the Twitter handle, Kendall.
Tottenham Genius T says South Africa should not just redistribute land, but should empower beneficiaries so that productivity is not compromised. That is spot on.
That is spot on, so to speak. This one from Gift says South Africa needs to strike a delicate balance on social justice, agricultural production and race when rethinking its land reform program. Also very good.
Seems like these two were in the same lecture.
Same lecture, same room, and I promise you they got it together.
They did. Craig Makati says we can learn that applying our minds amounts to peaceful resolution of problems. Yes, it is really about applying your minds to all the things that affect us, isn't it?
Exactly. Now, Gift once again says South Africa should desist from following Zimbabwe's radical and aggressive land restructuring as it has deeper economic repercussions, and we've seen it happening. Gift Mzonzora, thank you so much, Gift, for your comments, and of course all the other comments that we did receive here today. Thank you so much for your contributions as well. We'd like to see that you keep on doing that here on our Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. And of course, if you like us on the Facebook page, you become part and parcel of the inform. But that's where we got to leave it, Kendall.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, we're not going to leave on a sporting note. We're going to say goodbye to you. Ciao for now. Arrivederci.
Digamos.
The deepening hunger crisis in Malawi is threatening the survival of children.
And also it is the life-threatening part of malnutrition.
Malawi is facing